question for you, which is this. Do you think that disease is connected to our thoughts? Okay, so if you agree that our thoughts can make us sick, like ongoing stressful thoughts, is it possible that our thoughts can make us better? Okay, so having positive thoughts and a positive mental attitude, then it would be possible that that could actually have a positive physical effect, yes? So I encourage everyone to have positive thoughts and a positive mental attitude. The feeling that cannot find its expression in release or even in tears. Some people say, it's not good to cry. I think it can be very cathartic. And even just sometimes expressing something that you've never said out loud can be very helpful. But when people don't address these things, sometimes this happens. It causes our organs to weep, meaning what's happening emotionally or psychologically, sometimes when not addressed, then manifests physically. Organs, of course, referring to heart, lungs, liver, etc. I had a great example of this when I was volunteering at the flea market, as I'd mentioned, in between getting my license and finishing my studies. There was a gap where I was studying for my licensing board exams, and I was volunteering at a flea market where our church had set up a blood pressure booth. And it was Sunday morning. A lot of people showed up after basically partying on Saturday night. They didn't get a lot of sleep. They were still hungover, and blood pressure just ran high overall. But there was a woman there who had just arrived from, I think, Trinidad, maybe. She was only there for about a week. And I took her blood pressure, and it was very high. And I asked what she was doing. Like, was she on medication? No. Okay, was she here in Canada? She's visiting family. Did she get a lot of sleep? Was she drinking? Like all of those questions from the night before. No. Okay, how long's your blood pressure been high? For about 3 weeks. Oh, this is recent. And she said, I don't understand it. I don't know what's happening. And she was having heart palpitations as well, and arrhythmia, and was just being set up while she was here to go see a cardiologist because there were heart issues that were suddenly emerging. I said, okay, have you had a recent stressful event? She said, no, not really. But she was looking at me. Her mouth and her words said, no, not really. Her eyes said, yes, something really big just happened. So I said, are you sure? Like nothing? No, nothing. But even by how adamant she was in shaking her head and saying nothing, it said to me something, like something big. And so her daughter, who was there, said, Mom, why don't you just tell her? And just a few weeks ago, her son had died, which was the daughter's brother. And so I said, oh, okay. So I think that you have high blood pressure now because you're under a lot of stress, but also grief. But maybe some of the heart issues you're having, palpitations, etc., have to do with possibly dealing with that was like a drum roll, dealing with a broken heart. And when I said, I think you're having heart issues because of a broken heart, she burst out crying. And because it was a church booth, I got some other people who were there volunteering with me, and we prayed for her, just because it wasn't so much a physical issue. It was an emotional and possibly spiritual, mental issue, which was manifesting physically. And unfortunately, she didn't come back the next Sunday, and I'm not sure what happened from there. But that example makes me think of this, the feelings that can't find their expression or even their release, because she was trying so hard to not say or not admit that anything was wrong. And just by my discussion with her daughter, it seemed like that was kind of the road she was deciding to take. You know, we're just not going to talk about it. feeling that can't find its expression or even its release may cause other organs to weep, heart, lungs, etc. Or this is a saying that I did do or began a certification in mind-body medicine, and my mentor or the professor of the course, this was his saying, and I'm not sure if it was his original saying, but he reminded us of this all the time. The body sometimes bears the burden. So the body bears the burden. He told me of one of his first patients who had ongoing shoulder pain, excruciating shoulder pain, bilateral. No matter what she did, the pain just wasn't going away, which was actually affecting her mental health because she was beginning to feel a little bit hopeless. Like no matter what, it's not working. The acupuncture, the essential oils, like all of the regular things that we do physically weren't working, and she was still in pain. So she had been referred to him, and he asked her to write down her biography, like starting as a young child, like tell me your story. I remember someone, I think your daughter was referring to the stories of our lives. Tell me your stories. So she wrote down her entire biography, and it turned out that she was the eldest of many other siblings, and the parents weren't really there. So she became like the child parent. She became the mother for everybody, and she herself was a child. And that was a lot to shoulder. So after everyone got older and everybody made it out of childhood, she started having kind of unremitting shoulder pain. And it continued on until she started kind of unloading everything she felt, all of the resentment that she had carried, that she had to be a parent and was still a child, not getting any support, nobody helping her. It was just too much for her to shoulder, you could say, or too much on her shoulders for years and years and years. And then when it was kind of safe, then it was manifesting in physical pain. And that same professor said that physical pain, at least in his perspective, if someone was in physical pain, there was often pain behind the pain. So he would try to dig a little further. What's the emotional pain or mental or psychological pain behind your physical pain? That was his approach to physical pain. Anyway, with that particular patient, when she finally had the opportunity in a safe space to discuss her childhood and how angry she was and resentful, then her shoulder pain started getting better. But prior to that, all of the supplements and the topicals and the body work wasn't making a difference. And so in that case, he felt like her body was bearing the burden. Starting off on a very light note tonight. So the question is, why do we find it so hard to change? And sometimes it's a mental change, sometimes a physical change, sometimes an emotional change, sometimes both. Why do we find it so hard to change? And I read this saying and I thought it's exactly it. Everything is hard before it's easy. So the first part of change by Johann Wolfgang Van Goethe. So the first part of change might be difficult, and then it becomes easy. But one of the factors in change, before we get to the neuroscience of it, is just being willing, as we said yesterday, to let go of the story. So part of the story might be your identity. I am a blank. I am a middle child, therefore I have middle child syndrome, therefore it's true that blank, blank, blank. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, because it does, but it's more the attachment to an identity. And then when you're trying to change and the behavior change doesn't go with the identity, then there's a struggle and it becomes very difficult. So the question is, and I had many slides on identity in a separate little presentation, which I had separated last night and then realized that I hadn't integrated it into here. Lovely little pictures. So I'll just tell you what was on those slides, which was basically that behavior often falls in line with identity. And so when you're trying to switch a behavior, but it's clashing with your identity, then there's a struggle. And often the behavior doesn't stick, if you could think of it that way. So being open in terms of changing who you are. With my weight loss patients, at the beginning of the program, I often tell them, be prepared to transform. Not just transform in your body, but transform who you are. Are you ready to become a different person? So if there's someone who always sees themselves as overweight, or it's so difficult to lose weight, nothing works for me, etc., that's part of their story or part of their identity. And I'll find that they are doing really well, and then they hit a plateau, and it's like, okay, we've hit a hard part here, because you're succeeding, but this success, or this whatever amount of pounds it is, does not go with the way you view yourself as, this is who I am. So we're in a clash kind of spot. So that's when we get a little more into the emotional aspect of it. Are you willing to change? Not just change how you eat, but are you willing to change how you see yourself? Are you willing to not identify as an overweight person anymore? Or are you willing to embrace a new identity? And I just had a phenomenal breakthrough, I would say, with one of my patients, which I'd love to tell you more about, but then she might be identifiable, so I won't. But basically, she had struggled for maybe 8 months or so, then joined this group that I'm facilitating. And I've been working with her over the last maybe 8 or 9 months. Lifestyle changes, etc., but a little bit about the psychological aspect, like emotional eating, stress eating. Why? Are you able to see yourself differently? And now she's kind of on the other side and says, like, I actually now don't see, an overweight person in the mirror anymore. Even though when she was losing weight, like, she's doing great, she kept looking in the mirror and not, this isn't me, this isn't me. Like what I see in the mirror, which is minus 70 pounds, just isn't me. It's not right, something's wrong. So then we would hit a plateau, and the plateau would continue days and days and days, and then she would drop down. And now she finally is at the point of saying, this is the new me. And so it's become, I wouldn't say easy, but so much easier. This is the new me. That was the old me. I've bridged the gap, like we saw in that picture. She's on the other side, and she never wants to be like that person again, the new me. And I feel like that was a transformative process, kind of like going into the chrysalis from the caterpillar, in that stage of I'm in between identities, and then coming out a butterfly. Not saying that it's easy, but I think a major part of change, why everything's hard before it's easy, has to do with this identity piece, which is often kind of left out. Instead, it's like, here's the answer. Go do them. All right, yeah. But there's this letting go. And then as you let go, you can embrace, the new. But when people really hold on, and I've had some of those cases, and it's interesting with weight loss, because I think that really comes in, where I think, oh, this is going to be tough. This person just is holding on to being a chocoholic, or an ice cream lover, or a foodie, What's that? Of course, right. Chocoholic. Or a foodie. I've had just one or two patients. I'm a foodie. That's such a big part of their identity. And that with the foodie, for them comes a certain way of eating. And then the way that I'm encouraging them to eat doesn't really go with it. And so there's a struggle there. Are you willing to not be a foodie anymore, but maybe be a healthy longevity person? I don't know the name for the new identity, but are you willing to release the identity of a foodie? So I would say the first step of making change, why do we find it so hard to change? It's beyond just knowing the behaviors. It's an identity switch. Are you willing to do it, to release your identity. And maybe just get to the core of really what is your identity. You know, I would say as Christians, our identity is as a child of God. And then we have layers on top of that. But are you willing to release some of those layers to transform and eventually get out of the chrysalis and you're a completely different creature? We do know there are some core things that stay, though. So what happens in the brain and understanding what happens neurologically or the neuroscience of change is helpful as well. But I would say the first thing is just that identity piece and releasing your story of who you are. And then the second thing is understanding the role of dopamine and how you can use it to help you change. So there are a few key elements that are involved in habit change. We've been talking about the habits, but today I want to dive into a little more of how do you implement the habits and why does it work and why doesn't it work? And then we'll get back into more of what are the habits, and then we'll end with a little bit of psychology. So a little bit piecemealing many things together today. There are a few key elements involved in habit change. One is dopamine. Dopamine is the brain's reward and pleasure drug. And the other part, the other thing that is involved in habit change heavily is our memory. Your brain really remembers something very, very pleasurable. Really remembers how great something felt. And when there's a sudden surge of dopamine, which I'd mentioned the day before last, a sudden surge of dopamine, then a heavy memory is laid down in the hippocampus. Even if that thing was just a sense of relief and you had a burst of dopamine, a memory is laid down and suddenly your brain is going to urge you to do it again. Because if a lot of dopamine was secreted, your brain thinks that's important. Our brains are wired to increase the odds that we'll repeat pleasurable or rewarding activities. Whenever the reward circuit is activated, a burst of dopamine signals something important is happening that needs to be remembered. I mean, your brain doesn't know that it's bad. It doesn't know that that burst of dopamine from the chocolate fudge sundae was a bad thing. It just knows a lot of dopamine was secreted. So let's lay down a memory. So you do it again. Or it could be something wonderful. You know, you just finished the half marathon. You're going across the line. Yeah, a lot of dopamine secreted. Let's remember how wonderful that felt. And that will encourage you to keep up that habit. So it can work for us or it can work against us. According to the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, pleasure-based habits are hard to break because enjoyable behavior prompts your brain to release dopamine. And so how do we create a new habit? Can we use this whole dopamine system to our advantage to help us create a new habit if we know how it works? And the answer is right here, but you can't see it. One moment. Okay, so we want to make our brain's dopaminergic accounting system work for us so that it'll be easy to implement habit and routine. I hope not all the slides are like that. If they are, nope. Basically, you're going to make dopamine work for you instead of making dopamine work against you. How do you do that? First of all, does everyone understand what dopamine is? It's a chemical secreted by your brain that is secreted when you're feeling a lot of pleasure or you experience reward. Is that clear? Yeah. So your brain doesn't know if what you did was good for you or bad for you. It's just going to secrete a lot of dopamine because, wow, that felt amazing. Brain secretes dopamine. I want them to remember, so they'll do it again. But often it is something, sometimes, that is not good for us. So we want to make dopamine and those chemicals work for us instead of against us by rewarding your own positive behavior. So when you're making a habit change and you have actually succeeded in doing whatever that thing is, you want to reward your behavior, not with the thing you're trying to stop. So if your habit change is stopping coffee and you're like, I did it today, I didn't have a coffee, don't reward yourself with a coffee or something comparable. You want to find a different way of rewarding yourself. And one of the easiest and fastest ways is just through your voice. Woohoo, I did it, yeah! Because we know that when we're smiling or cheering, automatically dopamine's going to be secreted. You feel good, but you have something specific in your mind at that time. I did my 10-minute walk today, yeah. Or right after your cold shower, high-fiving yourself in the mirror. Not hard enough to break the mirror, but something with a smile and an exclamation and a little yes, so that you're causing your brain to secrete dopamine as a reward, and it is connecting what you just accomplished with the dopamine being secreted. And it's going to remember, oh, that felt so great. Oh, wait, it's 8:10 a.m. That's the time I normally do my exercise. Your brain's going to give you a little cue. Do your exercise now. We have the power to overpower it. Like, oh, I feel like I should do my exercise now. And you keep getting that urge, do the exercise. You do have the power to be like, I'm going to make myself sit on the couch instead. But instead, I would suggest listening to the cues. So, number one, reward your positive behavior. Very, very important. I actually heard a kind of like a formula by a multi-millionaire who is now podcasting, who started off not with a lot of money, but he came up with this formula for success that he thought was going to help him. So he knew that he would have something really hard to do. He did it in the morning, according to your circadian rhythm, which we're going to talk about today. So when he had hard things to do, a bunch of cold calls to make that he wasn't looking forward to, he would do them in the morning, but he would decide on his reward ahead of time. So the idea was he would wake up, visualize the hard things. So it's not like he's going in cold. Visualize himself making the phone calls and them coming out like with good outcomes, which was something that we talked about yesterday. And then he'd decide, when this happens, my reward is going to be blank. Whatever it was. Normally it wasn't food. It was like, I'm going to go outside and, I don't know, smell the roses kind of thing, or whatever that he really liked to do. So that was his formula. Sit, visualize, act, reward. And he continued to do that. Sit, visualize, act, reward. And then he became a teacher on how to implement this system to entrepreneurs to help them become successful. And it was very basic. Sit, visualize, act, reward. They had to visualize a positive outcome. They had to decide on the reward in advance. And as soon as he had done all of his calls, he would actually reward himself with that very thing that he was already expecting. So he always finished a success with a reward. And when I heard that, I said, that is ingenious, so simple, but every time he did that, it was causing a surge of dopamine, which would make it easier for him to make those cold calls or whatever it was the next day. Sit, visualize, do the thing, reward himself. But he knew the reward in advance. So the anticipation's there. Oh, I'm nearly there. One more phone call. Yeah, right. Now I get to go and play with my friends or whatever the reward was. Does that make sense? So how to implement habit change, use your dopaminergic system to help you instead of hindering you. But before you do that, you ask yourself, am I ready to kind of release who I am and change? Sit, visualize, act, and reward. Have the reward in mind in advance. Dopamine is the reward chemical that will strengthen whatever that new habit is. And then it creates that craving to do it again. Oh, that felt so great. I accomplished that. That was amazing. You know what? I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And tomorrow when you wake up, instead of dread, like I have those 10 cold calls to make, you're a little bit excited. Visualize yourself doing it, a good outcome. You know what the reward is, and then act on the reward as well. Even in doing this, you're causing a change in your brain, which is part of rewiring, the growth of new neurons. Part of this change, neurons firing together, and then the old neurons firing apart, is consistency and focus. So doing it once is not going to make a difference, but doing it again and again and again, this new behavior will make a difference. It's kind of like driving through the fresh snow, maybe in this area somewhere. First time you drive through the snow or walk through the snow, walk across somebody's yard, it doesn't leave a track or a trail, but if you keep doing it, it becomes a very, very clear trail. That's what happens in our brains, which is called neural networking. So the first time you do it, it's not enough to cause neurons to move or rewire, but you keep doing it. And these neurons are going to fire together, and kind of like you could think of it as a cable in your brain. And that's the signal for the new habit, which then becomes automatic. So use this system to make it easier and to kind of make it stick. You want to make dopamine work for you. Other things that make it easier, I'd mentioned removing old cues, replacing them with new cues. So the example that I gave yesterday was the cue of the woman who drank coffee every day. Again, not encouraging that. But she would put the coffee pot on, and the coffee pot became her new cue for doing lunges and squats. And that was easy. And after that, she would do what she continued to normally do. So she kind of squeezed it in between her regular routine. If you do it at the very end of the routine, whatever your regular routine is, and then you think, you know what, this at the end of doing everything I normally do, I'm going to go for a 5-minute or a 7-minute calisthenic, intense exercise period. Often people say, oh, I didn't have time today, I'll do it tomorrow. It's so easy to push it off when it's at the end of something. But what Dr. Chatterjee did was he fit it in the middle of things. You're doing what you normally do, then you do the new thing, and then you continue doing what you normally do. And it's so much easier that way and hard to put it off because you know after this I'm still going to walk the dogs or whatever that next thing is in line of what you normally do. That's replacing it with new cue, removing old cues. The example I gave was smoking or drinking alcohol. If you keep going to the same bar but you're not drinking the alcohol, which is great that you decide you're not going to drink anymore, but your brain's going to give you the cue once you walk in there, oh, drink the alcohol, because there's a neuro association between that bar and you drinking. Or the friends that you used to smoke with at break, you're still going to the break, but you're not smoking. Your brain's going to say, isn't this a place you normally smoke with these people? Isn't what you normally do? So hard to not smoke. Suddenly you get an insatiable, like drive you mad kind of craving, and you give into it and smoke and think, I have no willpower. But it's really not about willpower. The neuroassociative cue, which is the smoke break with these people, was already there. So you'd have to make some changes, remove the old cues, stop going on smoke break, maybe stop hanging out with those people for a while, stop going to that bar. I know you feel like you're a whole different life, but remove the cues that are associated with that habit that you want to break. And this way you're making it easier on yourself. Does that make sense? Yes. Suddenly very hot in here now. Unless it's just me. It's not just me. So synaptogenesis, new connections between neurons. So part of this making habit change is basically, you could say it's in some ways rewiring our brains. Rewiring our brains, as I said, you're consistently doing that new thing. And when you do that new thing, you're rewarding yourself, so there's a burst of dopamine. And as you're doing that, you're making new connections between neurons, and eventually it's like your brain changes. So it's over time of being consistent with that behavior. But the very first step is asking yourself, am I ready to change? Am I ready to kind of become a new person? Am I ready to go into the chrysalis stage? So I've heard that some people say it happens in 21 days. I don't think that's what the science shows. The British Journal of General Practice says this: habits are actions that are triggered automatically in response to cues. So that's why if you're doing the same thing but trying to not do that habit anymore, it's so hard. And it really isn't willpower. It is triggered automatically in response to contextual cues that have been associated with the performance of that habit. So an old cue and a new habit, those two don't go together. A new cue and a new habit, that goes together unless you're using the hook of a positive old cue and squeezing that new habit in, like the coffee pot, which I'm not saying that's generally a good habit. You want to get to the point where the habits that you're learning are just automatic. And some people, as I said, think, 21 days, I just have to keep doing that habit, and then it's automatic. We want to get to the point where you're making long-term changes, strengthening the connection in neurons. And I think 21 days is just a little bit early, but fantastic if you're getting to 21 days of being consistent. After that, like with that first slide, it said that making habit change is hard before it becomes easy. Maybe after 21 days, it will become easier. But according to studies, it can take 6 to 9 weeks on average to really create that habit to the point where it's automatic. 6 to 9 weeks. So not quite 21 days, but your first kind of goal could be, I'm doing this consistently for 21 days. Okay, awesome. Now it's getting a little bit easier. After 6 weeks, a month and a half, you're not really thinking about it anymore. This is just your habit. You can make it easy by using an already created cue. This is the idea of the hook that we talked about yesterday. And Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, a British physician and author, realized a hook was the answer. And I have a video that I want to play, but with Dr. Chatterjee talking about the hook. One moment. Okay, so hopefully the sound will be okay on this, and I'm going to kind of scrub through a little bit of this video. But this is Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who is a British MD, who also has a podcast and has written books about change, how to implement change in your health in particular. Oh. Maybe we could turn it up a little bit. Right, that first part's kind of important. Ready?
100%. Look, it sounds a bit like a gimmick, doesn't it? 5 minutes. But if I think about my own life and how I've managed to look after my brain, my body, my heart, whilst being, married, 2 young children, busy job, as well as my job as a medical doctor. I write a book a year, I host a podcast. I also, for many years, have cared for my elderly parents, right? So I get what it feels like to be busy, but I've always found a way to look after myself through that busyness. And one of the things I always found with patients is they will always say to me, Rongan, I don't have time. I want to be healthy, but I don't have time. I thought it's really interesting because let's take toothbrushing as an example. We kind of know that if we brush our teeth for 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening, which hopefully everyone listening to the show right now does.
Yes, please do that.
We know that 4 minutes a day of toothbrushing, generally speaking, is going to look after our dental hygiene for life. Sure, you're going to have a checkup and you may need some polishing and cleaning, whatever, but by and large, what we don't do is go, I'm too busy on Monday. I don't have time for my brushing. Work's busy. I've got to pick the kids up, right? Tuesday, Wednesday. We don't do that and then go, the weekend on Sunday, I'm going to do a 1 hour deep clean on my teeth. We don't do that. Anyone listening now knows that sounds ridiculous. Yet when it comes to behavior change for our health, for our brains, right? We make it too difficult. We make it really hard. People think that 5 minutes is not enough, so they stop doing anything that's going to help them. And this is why they try and go for like a 1 hour walk at the weekend or a 1 hour yoga session. Nothing wrong with that. But in my view, not a substitute for daily practices that can help you. And these practices don't need to take long. Just like toothbrushing can take 4 minutes a day, I do a strength workout every single day. I haven't missed a day for maybe 3 or 4 years now.
Wow.
And I would argue it has nothing to do with motivation. It's because I've applied the principles of behavior change into my life, right? And a lot of the time we don't follow those principles, those rules when it comes to ourselves, right? So I'll explain the behavior first, right? How do I do this? Well, I have a morning routine, which we can maybe get into if you want to. But one component of that morning routine is a 5-minute strength workout, right? So how do I do that? Well, there's 2 rules of behavior change. I mean, in the book, there's my 6 rules, right? But the 2 rules I think I'd love to share with people are, number one, you've got to make it easy.
Yeah.
Right, so why do you have to make it easy? You and me are both good friends with Professor BJ Fogg, world leading expert in behavior change from Stanford. We had a great chat a few years ago because what was really great about our conversation was that the things I had figured out through seeing patients, he figured out through research. So our conversation together was a beautiful kind of meeting of clinical experience from me and scientific research from BJ. And we basically came to the same conclusion that these small habits done consistently are how most people make changes, right? So the reason I do my workout every day is because it's not a 1 hour workout. It's not a 30-minute workout. It's 5 minutes. Even on my busiest days, I can't say I don't have time, right? I do have 5 minutes. So what do? One of the things I do in my morning routine is I come into my kitchen and I make coffee. Now, I'm very particular with how I make coffee. I like the ritual around it. I like a specific type of coffee, right? So I get out my French press, I weigh out my coffee, pour in the water, and I put a timer on my phone for 5 minutes because that's how long I like it to brew for. Now, in those 5 minutes, Jim, I don't go on email, I don't go on Instagram, I don't scroll the news, right? In the 5 minutes whilst I'm waiting for the coffee, I do a strength workout in my pajamas. Right, now this is really important. Why do I do it in my pajamas? Well, I've made it about as easy as possible, right? I'm in my kitchen, I've come down, I'm in my pajamas, I've got a dumbbell and a kettlebell sitting in my kitchen. Now, sometimes it's body weight, sometimes I just do a few exercises with the kettlebell. But before you know it, 5 minutes is up, put them down, and I'm rewarded with my beautiful hot cup of coffee. Right, so why does that work? Well, number one, I've made it. Now, you've got to make it easy because, one of the problems, I've seen this with patients over and over again, we overly rely on motivation.
As I said, don't use coffee as a reward.
In your book, Limitless, you talk about motivation. It's one of your M's, right? So I get that. But I think we overly rely on motivation. And the scientific research shows us that motivation never stays up forever, right? That, BJ calls it the motivation wave. Right? Motivation comes up, motivation goes down. So here's the reality that most people, I don't think, are applying in their life. If you make something difficult to do, you will do it when your motivation is high. Okay, what's the example of this? New Year, right? People wake up on New Year's Day and they decide this year's going to be different. This year, I'm going to go spinning 4 times a week. Right? And they do it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They actually get it done. But then 3 weeks in, something happens, work's busy, in the UK it's raining or it's cold, it's dark, and you just can't be bothered because it's an hour's spinning class. So before you know it, the start of February, it's something you used to do. So the problem is that you do the behavior when motivation's high, but when motivation's low, if the behavior is difficult, you don't end up doing it. But if you make the behavior easy to do, you'll do it when your motivation's high. You'll also do it when your motivation's low. So the reason I do a 5-minute workout is because I can never say to myself, Rogan, you don't have time. You don't have time for 5 minutes. So that's one of the reasons that habit has stuck now for almost 4 years. I've made it easy. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is, where do you put that behavior that you want in life? A lot of people don't give this much thought. They just say, oh, I want to work out. I want to meditate. Okay, great. That's a great intention. There's all kinds of benefits for our brains when we do that. But they don't think specifically about where I'm going to put this in my life. Now, any behavior we do needs a trigger. So a trigger could be on memory, right? I could remember, I had a message with Jim a few weeks ago. We said on this day we were going to get together and record, right? Memory works. It just happens to be the most unreliable trigger that there is. So I don't rely on my memory for important things like meeting you in my podcast studio. People listening don't. They have their Google Calendar, or it will be written down, scheduled, the important things in their life, right? So memory is a trigger, just very unreliable. So what's a better trigger than memory? A better trigger would be some sort of post-it note, like a post-it note on your fridge, or a notification on your phone saying, hey, in an hour's time, you've got to meet Jim, right? That also works. But the The best trigger for a behavior, as evidenced by the scientific research on behavior change, is when you stick that new behavior on to an existing habit. Right? So your audience may have heard you talk about this before because it works. Mm-hmm. Right? An existing habit is something you are automatically doing without much conscious thoughts.
Like making coffee.
Like making coffee, right? So in the morning, I don't need a notification to remind me to make coffee. I don't need my assistant to phone me at 5:30 or 6 a.m. and say, hey, Rongan, don't forget to make your coffee. I don't need my wife to remind me. No, it's a habit. I'm going to do that. So therefore, not only am I going to do it, I'm going to enjoy it, right? So therefore, by sticking my workout onto my coffee habit, it happens. That's why it happens Monday to Sunday, because I don't miss a day on drinking my coffee. It's part of my morning routine. I love the ritual around it. It's quiet time for me. So I've made it easy. Again, I don't have to wear any special sports gear. Mm-hmm. I don't need to put on my running shorts. I do it in my pajamas. What else have I done to make it easy? I've set my environment up to help me. So I used to do just body weight. But then a few years ago, I put a kettlebell and a dumbbell in the kitchen. And I remember my wife and I had a conversation. She said, are you going to leave this stuff out in the kitchen? Can't we just put it in the cupboard or put it in the garage? Mm-hmm. And we actually had a conversation. I said, hey, babe, listen, if I put that in the cupboard or put it in the garage, I'm not going to use it. But if it's in the kitchen, I'm going to use it all the time. And again, it's one of those things. Out of sight is out of mind. Even if I pick up the weight just to move it out of the way so I can get to my coffee, mm-hmm. by having it there, I'm also visually triggering myself each morning to not forget to do it. So it's very simple, but let's be really clear about this. How many people listening to your show, Jim, know that moving their bodies, doing some sort of strength training is going to help their brain? It's going to improve blood flow. It's going to improve circulation. It's going to enhance the release of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic fats. I know you've spoken about that many times in the past, right?
Yes, I hope all of our listeners know all that already.
Right, so they know that.
Yep.
But some of them, despite knowing that, won't be moving as much as they want. They'll think, oh man, I didn't get my movement in today, right? Mm-hmm. I want to. Oh, I hear, I just heard the latest research. We start losing muscle mass. As soon as we hit 30, our muscle mass starts to go down each year. We know that the amount of lean muscle mass we have is one of the main predictors of our longevity, right? And our health as we get older. Yet despite knowing that, they still think about strength training as something they're going to do in the future when the time is right, when they've got time, when somehow miraculously things change, when the kids are always in bed on time, the email inbox is not going to overflow, it ain't going to happen, right? So going back to your original question, is it realistic to change your life in 5 minutes? Well, I would say yes, because I've done this thousands of times with my patients. When I've seen what works and what doesn't work. It's over 2 decades now that I've been in practice, so I've seen tens of thousands of patients, and I've seen very few people, in my experience, manage to turn their lives around completely overnight. Like very few completely do an overhaul where I'm going to go an hour's jogging every day, 20 minutes of meditation every day. I've rarely seen it happen. The only time I've seen it happen, Jim, is when there's been a significant life experience, something like a job loss, or there's been a death, or someone's girlfriend or boyfriend has split up with them. Something really big and emotional that has caused them to change everything. Sure, you can change your life overnight when that happens. But apart from that, I just haven't seen it that much. I've seen that these small changes actually...
I'm just going to fast forward to near the end. But I think what he said is what we talked about and what we were talking about yesterday, using that pre-existing habit. As I said, I'm not promoting coffee, but then he rewarded himself. So whatever your pre-existing habit is, you can even start thinking about it now and then hooking that new habit on, and then you continue on your day. This made me think of when I first started working out, or wanted to start working out. I wanted to make it a daily thing. And I would come home from work and then think, okay, I'm going to change my shoes, and then I'm going to go and work out. And then I think, oh, I had a hard day at the office. This was when I was working 9-to-5 job. So I'm just going to watch a little bit of TV while I'm changing my shoes. And then I'm going to go work out, but I want to put on my favorite gym stuff because I have those new Lululemon pants. So I'm going to put those on. And then, then I get hungry. And before you knew it, I wasn't going out again. And I tried to minimize it down, but no matter what, I just found it so hard to get back out after working all day once I came in. So I realized to make it easier, I'm just going to I did bring these shoes with me, but normally my shoes are in my trunk and I have extra clothes in the trunk. And I thought I'm just going to promise myself that I will always drive straight to the gym from work. And that was the thing that worked. And I'll always have gym equipment and shoes. So I have 2 or 3 pairs of running shoes. And my orange running shoes are normally in the trunk of the car. So when I get to the gym, I can work out. And then I started changing at work because just that, you're tired and you're thinking, now I have to go in the girls' change room. I don't know. It was something, even if you're at the gym, like just the step of changing in the girls' change room. So I would arrive at the gym already in my clothes and ready to go. And that made it so much better. At one point, I was actually sleeping in my gym clothes. At this point, I was at school. So I would put my gym clothes on, go to sleep, roll out of bed, and then drive straight to the gym. Like I wanted to make it as easy as possible. And I really didn't care what I looked like at that time. So, and that really helped. When I was going to Andrews, I would sleep in my gym clothes and go to the gym. And so just as he was saying, he worked out in his pajamas, came downstairs and had the kettlebell, etc., in the kitchen. Sounds like his wife wasn't too happy about that, but he made it as easy as possible, as few extra steps as you can. Remove any extra steps so it's easy.
The title of this
Yes.
is a little bit deceptive.
Yes.
It implies that in 5 minutes you can do everything. Really, he's saying 5 minutes every day.
5-minute increments, right. How to completely change your life in 5-minute increments during the day. I think we're ready for dinner. Yes? So we're going to say a prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for this wonderful food, for providing it, for the hands that have prepared it. We just pray that you'll bless it, God, and it will be good for our bodies. We say these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen. There's a lot more. Okay, awesome. So I'm just going to play the end of this video as you're eating, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about eating while you're eating. So I hope you enjoy the food and the rest of the video as you're eating. We're at 23:17. I think it's around here.
Is movement, and the third M is mindset.
Oh, I want to catch. He has 3 M's for overall better health.
Again, for people who say they're busy, right? I'll maybe share a story in a minute about one of my patients who was a single mother. I think she had 2 kids from recollection. She would always be rushing around, but I helped her create a 5-minute morning routine that worked for her, that really helped lower her stress levels and then reduced how many skin outbreaks she was getting, because I strongly felt that stress was driving a lot of her skin problems. And so I have this little framework for a morning routine that maybe I'll share with your audience.
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
Again, maybe it sounds ironic. So I don't like giving set prescriptions to people because I understand we're all different. We all have different preferences. We all have had different experiences with different lifestyle behaviors. We all have different cultural backgrounds. So I like to create frameworks that people can then personalize for themselves. So the framework I use to create my morning routine that I use with my patients to help them create theirs is what I call the 3 M's. Okay. The first M is mindfulness. The second M is movement. And the third M is mindset. Right. So let's start with the first M, mindfulness. Some form of activity that you enjoy that's going to help you be more mindful. Okay, so it could be meditation, it could be breath work, it could be journaling if you want, like some form of mindful practice. Now, for me at the moment, it's breath work, right? So I'll get up. Now, I'm early to bed and early to rise. That's a choice I've made, particularly since I've had children, because I realized very early on in my career as a father that I'm a better human being, I'm a better dad, I'm a better husband, I'm a better doctor when I've had myself each morning, before the family are up and about. I think there's some self-awareness there that I've learned that I function better when I get up early and have time to myself. So I always get up early. These days it's about 4:30 or 5. Again, I'm not saying people have to do this. I don't use an alarm clock. I naturally wake up then. And so I'll come downstairs and I'll do some breath work. Now, I'm at a point in my life where I do have a bit more time. So it is more than 5 minutes now for me. But it wasn't for many years. It was just 5 minutes. And I want to make sure people understand that, because you can get benefit in probably less than 5 minutes even. So let's say it was 5 minutes of breath work. Okay. And there's many practices out there. The practice I love is something that I call the 3-4-5 breath, where you breathe in for 3, you hold for 4, and you breathe out for 5. Okay, 3, 4, 5 breath. Anytime that your out breath is longer than your in breath, you help to switch off the sympathetic parts of the nervous system, the kind of stress state, and you help to promote the parasympathetic state, the relaxation state, right? There's a million breath practices out there. You don't have to do this one, but for many years, this is what I did, okay? People should find the ones that they enjoy, that work for them. So the first M is mindfulness, right? So you choose a practice. The second M is movement, right? So I just shared already my 5-minute movement practice whilst my coffee is brewing, right? So I've done my breath work in the living room. I come to the kitchen, make my coffee, do my workout whilst the coffee's brewing. And then that leads me nicely onto the third M, which is mindset. All mindset means for me, you could do affirmations if you want, but what I like doing, I'm a big fan of reading. Mm-hmm. I like to read a positive or an uplifting or a thought-provoking book first thing in the morning. So I've got the reward of my nice cup of black coffee that I've made the way I like it.
Reward.
I've always got 3 or 4 books kicking around my kitchen and my living room because I don't want procrastination. I don't want to come down in the morning and go, oh, where are the books? Oh, which one shall I read today? You know, like I said with Amazon and the order, every decision you have to make, right, it's a reason to procrastinate, it's a reason to pull out. So I've made the choice to read something, and this happens every day. This happens 7 days a week, right? Again, I've automated it so I don't need to think, and that's why it happens every day. So again, I'd encourage people to, if they find it useful, and of course some people, it's not going to resonate with them, but for people who do, give it a try. Try that 3M practice in the morning. See if you can personalize it for yourself. And just to close the loop, I think she was 42-year-old single mother who said she didn't have time. I taught her 3Ms. And you know what she did? She did 1 minute of 3, 4, 5 breathing. So that was for her mind. Mm-hmm. She did 2 minutes of yoga. She just chose some of her favorite moves. 2 minutes of yoga. And then for the final M, mindset, she did 2 minutes of affirmations. That was it.
5 minutes total.
5 minutes total, right? And what is it showed her how she could feel. She never knew. She didn't experience that feeling of calm and control. And she did that first thing in the morning. 5 minutes, skin got better, stress started going down. And a few months later, she then expanded that into, I think, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So the reason 5 minutes is so powerful, A, it works in and of itself. But once you realize how good you can feel with 5-minute practices, very quickly, you want more, right? So you naturally start to do more. So yeah, I coming back to your first question, can you change your life in 5 minutes? Absolutely.
Yeah, that's probably.
Okay, can you change your life in 5 minutes? As you said, a little bit different. Your entire life doesn't change in 5 minutes. Oops. One moment. And it is gone. So your entire life doesn't change in 5 minutes. It's more like 5 minutes per day doing something 5 minutes per day, every day, over time, changes your life. But the important thing is consistency. And as he said, eventually it goes a little bit further than 5 minutes. Yeah. Go ahead, Glenn.
I have I agree with what you're presenting here, but I think there are counterexamples, perhaps. I think that I had a cat.
Yes.
While I had that cat, he was an old cat. I got 2 dogs.
Okay.
I had 3 cats actually at that time, and the dogs were not paying really much attention to the cats, and so they would bump into them sometimes and cause them a little bit of havoc. I had one evening my puppy sitting on the couch beside me, and the old cat came over and looked at the puppy and got up on the couch and put his paw under the eye of the puppy and looked at the puppy's face. By the way, the puppy's mother was watching all this, and then the cat got down and he went.
Right.
And in that moment, that took maybe 2 minutes in total, those dogs were permanently changed to respect cats. They never, ever were disrespectful to cats. And after the old cat died, it was almost like he was going to come back, and it's almost like he was saying, I could take your eye out if I felt like it. I'm not gonna, but you're going to be nice to me now. Anyways, whatever the endorphin or the dopamine couldn't be what the payoff was. The payoff was kind of connected to fear or something.
Yeah.
And yet a habit got established in one training session. I mean, I can't think of a. Well, there's. I think
that's more like an understanding getting established.
Well, the behavior
and definitely
changed.
Not dopamine.
The behavior changed right at that moment. I also think, in In terms of,
I mean, that works with parents and kids. One whooping for doing something, and the child's like, that wasn't good. Maybe I'm not going to do that again.
Jane, I'll have one more of those too.
So the quick learn. Yes. Go on.
Also, too, a lot of our bad habits can be established really quickly. I mean, people, as far as I can make out, and I've never smoked crack, but they smoke crack once, and that's it. Ooh,
and
that
that's
was ever
because
nice.
of the surge of dopamine.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
But it's enough in one
Yes.
session to think, I want this again.
Exactly. Which is how addiction works. So the idea is that you make dopamine work for you. It might take a little bit longer, but you do that thing, you feel amazing, and then you want to do it again.
Also, we don't consider habits that are good habits to be addictions. You know, some
Some
people
of them can be. I mean,
I
people are
know.
addicted to running.
or dance or music. I mean, people, they love it to a degree where, mind you, that isn't
I
established
don't
by
know if
one.
that's, or a good habit. But yeah, running, but people get addicted to running, but part of it is the burst of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. So there's a chemical euphoria that happens, and they want to feel that again and again, as I can attest. But I can't run anymore. But yes. While we're eating, thank you for your comments. I thought while we're eating and still have the food in front of us, this would be a nice time to take a little break from habit forming to talk about eating, because I realized every day people are eating at around 6, and I never talk about how to eat in a way that where you'd have better digestion. This is the Mental Health Miracles conference, but since you're eating, I thought we'd take a little break and talk about eating. So my question would be, can the way that you eat or I eat improve your digestion or even help with weight loss? What is mindful eating? Do you think the way that you eat could help your digestion? So not just the food that you're eating, but the way that you're eating. Okay, so what would the first step in eating for better digestion be? Okay, mindfulness. Okay, chewing. Yep, I definitely say chewing, but that's a little further down. When you say mindfulness, what do you mean?
I'm thinking of it the same way that he was doing this, a way to relax. If we're excited while we're eating, it doesn't work.
Okay, and why doesn't it work well if you're overly excited while eating?
If we're excited, we're moving into the fight or flight thing.
Ooh.
We're not getting the right juices flowing in our mouth and whatnot. Our blood's being concentrated in our main organs, and it's just not the thing that we need.
Right. So when you're excited, I mean, in a stressed kind of state, that's not the right time to eat because your brain's in, at least your autonomic nervous system's in a sympathetic nervous system state, fight or flight. When you're in fight or flight state, then you don't have as much saliva in your mouth. The salivary glands, parotid, submandibular, etc., are not going to secrete as much saliva. And saliva helps with the breakdown of carbohydrates because of the salivary amylase in saliva, etc., which I won't go into too much. But you need a lot of saliva to break down the food. You're not going to have as much hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which is where protein's digested. Then there are all kinds of pancreatic enzymes that are secreted as well. Basically, you're in a state where you're prepared to run away or fight, and your digestive juices are low, and your body's not focusing on digestion. So first step to having better digestion is to be in the right state of mind. And that would be a calm state of mind. So how do you get in a calm state of mind? Well, we prayed before we ate. So even taking a few moments, prayer, gratitude, thankfulness, helps to then switch your mind into a parasympathetic state. And then you're calmer. You're going to have more saliva, more of those digestive enzymes and juices happening, and then you'll digest your food better. So the first step in digestion, whether it's good or bad, actually starts in your mind. Go ahead, George.
You know, your natural schedule eating.
Yes.
I can remember as a kid on the farm, my grandmother insisted there was 3 meals a day, and everyone was right on the clock. You didn't eat one day at 5 o'clock and the next day at 7 o'clock. you ate at 6 o'clock every day. Now, to me, you talk about mindset. Okay, when 6 o'clock was coming up, your mind said, it's time to eat. And I don't know who taught these old people, but they seem to know automatically that this was good for digestion or whatever.
It's a little bit like Pavlov's dogs. You know, the timing, and your brain goes, okay, I'm ready to eat. Which was an experiment that a psychologist did with his dogs. He'd ring the bell, and then whenever he rang the bell, that was time for the dogs to eat. But it got to the point where he had removed the food. He rang the bell, and they started salivating, just knowing that, okay, I'm about to eat. But there was no food, but they still salivated. So we're in some ways training our own minds, and the scheduled eating is a lot better for digestion, weight loss, etc., depending on what times. Yes, go ahead, Terrence. Yes. Wow. What a great example. And for some people, when they're really stressed, they don't want to eat. They're losing their appetite. I mean, stressed eating and emotional eating, that's a bit of a different thing. So for some people, it's a tool to help calm them down. Because when you are eating, especially if it's something that you like, you get that little bit of a sense of relief because dopamine's secreted, like, oh, this is good. This feels really nice. So you get a relief from the stress. But for some other people, if they don't look to food as a tool, then they're in a sympathetic nervous system state, kind of too hyped up to even want to eat. Did you have a comment? Oh. So step number 1, tune in. So much better to start eating when you're in a calm state of mind. What beautiful looking desserts. In a calm state of mind, parasympathetic nervous system, more relaxed state of mind, so you're going to get more saliva, more hydrochloric acid, more motility, meaning we have a layer of muscle going through the esophagus, the stomach, the intestines, and everything gets moved along through contraction of the muscles. Are you putting your spoon up? No. Okay. Between the pen and the spoon. So better motility, and overall, even at the very end of the feeding tube, you could say better elimination when you're relaxed. But it all starts with mindset. So first you'd ask yourself, as I'm sitting here eating, what is my mindset? And when you pray and you thank God for the food, then you're in that mindset of thankfulness, which is a parasympathetic state. Secondly, even with what you're eating right now, to be a little more mindful and to enjoy the food a little more, especially if it's new food and you want to make eating this type of food your habit. The more you enjoy it, the easier it's going to be. And it won't be like I'm making myself eat kale salad because I know it's good for me. Instead, you'll look forward to the kale salad. The more you enjoy it, the easier it is because more dopamine's being secreted. Appreciate the colors of whatever you're eating. So the next step, before you even eat it, appreciate the colors. Look at all of the beautiful colors. It puts you in a state of gratitude, anticipation. Next, listen to the wonderful sounds that are around you. And hopefully you're surrounded by nice sounds that aren't hyping you up and putting you in a stress state, but more of a melodic, lovely, parasympathetic state. Next, smell your food before you eat your food. Why would you want to smell your food before you eat your food? I think anyone who's ever worked in a bakery, as I have, or owned a bakery knows this trick, because when people smell food, suddenly they're ready to eat the food. It causes the secretion of ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, which also activates salivation. So you smell the food, wow, that smells so good. Sometimes you might be walking by the bakery, you smell that freshly baked croissant or whatever it is. You weren't even hungry, but you say, I'm just going to go in and take a look. And when you're in there, ooh, you're smelling it more. And before you know it, You might be salivating and you think, I'm just going to buy one. It was the scent that made you kind of float into the bakery. So smell your food before you eat it. It causes more ghrelin to be secreted. You'll salivate more and you're going to digest your food better. And then, of course, eat your food in a mindful way. What is mindful eating? It means eating it slowly and chewing your food, chewing and chewing and chewing. That's why we have these lovely things. You've got them. Let's use them. So chew your food as much as possible until it's like liquid or applesauce in your mouth. And at the very end, appreciate how wonderful that whole experience was, and then begin all over again with the next bite. Slow it down. If you're slowing it down, I mean, if weight loss is your goal and you're slowing it down, you're taking in fewer calories, and then you're enjoying your food more. But also, I've found with my patients who have digestive issues, one of my first questions is, are you a fast eater? And about 99% of the time, the answer is yes. I don't think I've had one patient with digestive issues yet who says they're a really slow eater. Second thing is snacking between meals. Yes, go ahead, Jackie.
I understand about the mindful eating and that. Is there a trick to keeping that food in your mouth? I mean, I've tried it in the past until it's soupy, because that to me, that kind of gags me. Like, it's kind of...
Oh, you don't like the texture?
No, it's kind of gross. Like, it's not like I take 2 bites and swallow. I can chew it a little bit longer, but not in... Like, is there a trick to just keep chewing it till it's almost soupy? Because that's a turn off for me.
That's a tough one, because when it is covered by saliva, it's called a bolus, and the texture of the food is changing. And because the saliva has enzymes in it that start to break down the food in your mouth, the texture is automatically going to start getting a little soupy. I mean, swishing it around your mouth, maybe? Would that make it worse? Oh, really?
For me personally,
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's a habit that I could learn. Because I have practiced it in the past. I've heard it before, but
Yeah.
like a piece of bread, for instance, I'm chewing, and then
The texture changes.
and I don't want to keep that in my mouth. I just
Oh,
swallow it.
okay. You know, the texture change is actually a really good sign, because that bread, which is carbohydrates, starting to be broken down. So carbohydrates are broken down by salivary amylase in the mouth. It's starting to be broken down, and you might even notice, this might help, oh, this bread's starting to taste a little sweeter. Maybe if you look forward to the taste change, because it's being converted into sugar or glucose, perhaps. Or at least chewing it until it's more like applesauce versus liquid. That could help. Or continuing the chewing. Are you drinking at the same time?
No, I don't think.
Okay. Oh, excellent.
I try to go for at least 30 minutes before I drink after my meal.
Right. And before your meal as well?
I try, if I remember, like this is all new. It's not new, but the practices lately are new. I try to drink 1 to 2 cups about half an hour before I eat. I'm not faithfully doing that, but because I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I've got stickies up, so,
Oh, okay.
so some days I do it, some days I don't.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't eat if I drink with my meal.
Right. Maybe even when it's becoming liquidy, keep chewing. So you're focusing more on the chewing than feeling the texture in your mouth. That might help. Go ahead, Terrence.
I use a 30 count. Solid stuff, and then
All right.
you're focusing on numbers instead of consistency.
I was actually going to say 32 chews, but 30 is close. Yep. You also want to taste it and enjoy it at the same time.
Yeah, I guess I just have to revamp my mindset, because to me, a meal, you don't do that, you just eat food, but it takes away
The joy,
of eating.
the joy of eating.
But I guess if you've got a goal in mind, then you just have to really...
Yeah. But you're also tasting it. Like, I'm tasting the food more and more and more. As I'm chewing it, I'm tasting it. And the longer it stays in your mouth, the more you're tasting it. Maybe you could think that. Tips for better eating and better digestion. The right mindset is the beginning of better digestion. We want to be in a rest and digest state, which is also called the parasympathetic nervous system state. Number 1, which we did tonight, pray or take a few moments to breathe intentionally before eating. When you do that, you lower your heart rate, you also lower your blood pressure, and you prepare your mind, all the juices, etc., ready to eat. Place thankfulness in your mind before eating, again, so you're in more of a calm state. Slow it down. Eat slowly and do not swallow until the consistency is like applesauce. Some people say liquid, but applesauce isn't bad. Number 4, put your fork or your spoon down if you're naturally or you tend to be a fast eater. Put your fork down to intentionally slow yourself down and then pick it back up. This is called taking a pause. So there's nothing wrong with kind of, elongating the duration of your meal time because you're putting your fork down, you're chewing your food, you're mindful, taking your time, putting your fork back up, and eating. I was always really intrigued with those cartoons when I was younger of, the cartoon figure coming to eat and just flicks on a switch and his mouth turns into a vacuum. It's like, eats his food, done. Some people are like that. They turn the vacuum cleaner on, inhale their food, and then it's over. So we want to slow it down so we're chewing our food. Number 5, do not discuss contentious things during mealtime. This is a tough one because mealtime's the time where everyone's at the table and you might think this is the perfect time to bring up that subject I've been waiting all day to discuss. And that person's in front of you. They're not going to run away. You're not going to run away. So you think, let's have a discussion about this really uncomfortable, unsettling thing while we're both here right now. And I would say when you're doing that, or if other people are around hearing the argument, nobody is going to have optimal digestion. Anyone who's sitting at the table hearing that, including yourself, because you're putting your brain, your mind back into that stressed fight or flight kind of state. So even though that person's there, talk about lovely things if you're talking at all during mealtime. And that's a tough one. It's so tempting to just bring up whatever it is. Hold on to it and instead discuss that thing during your digestive walk. So wait 15 minutes, then go for a walk after eating. Why would a walk be the perfect time to bring up that prickly issue? Anyone?
You can walk fast, you don't hear me.
Okay, you could run away. You can brisk walk away from that person. Yeah. Right. So you're talking about something that's uncomfortable, which would normally be a little bit stressful. And that's why you don't want to talk about it while you're eating. But you're exercising. So there's going to be secretion of dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. And so that's going to kind of soften the entire conversation. So you're kind of blunting the other stress hormones that would be released while you're talking about that challenging thing. So 15 minutes after eating, hold on to it, wait till you're going for a digestive walk, then that's the best time, and hopefully the person you're walking with won't suddenly run away from you. And when they're at the table, they're not going to suddenly get up. But yes, have that discussion when you're doing the digestive walk. Do not lie down after eating. What happens when you eat a big meal, which is another thing, and then you lie down right after? Okay. Yes. What's the bad thing that happens? Yes, you might go to sleep. Your blood sugars go up. You haven't used the sugars that you just put in. Anything else?
Digestive process slows down, right?
Okay. That can happen too. I mean, there's a little bit of a gravity factor, but still the motility will most likely happen anyway. So has anyone here ever experienced acid reflux or heartburn? Yeah. Does it happen when you lie down after your meal? Right. So one of the things that you're more apt to experience, and when you eat a big meal and then you lie down after a big meal, is acid reflux or heartburn. So instead, you're going for a 15-minute walk to help with digestion instead of lying down after your meal. Basically, between the stomach and the esophagus, there's a little sphincter. You could think of it as a gate that helps to keep the hydrochloric acid in the stomach within the stomach. Also, that sphincter is called the lower esophageal sphincter, also known as the cardiac sphincter. So it helps to keep the acid in the stomach. Oh, here's a prime example. If this were the stomach and the acid is here, and then suddenly, and this is a sphincter, and suddenly you lie down like this, then that acid is pushing up against that cardiac sphincter, and some of it might seep through, and it goes right up your esophagus. And that's when you experience acid reflux. Depending on how high it goes up, it might feel like heartburn. It might just feel like indigestion. People start belching a lot, but there's this uncomfortable feeling between here and here. And it's the acid that's coming up. So you don't want to do this right after eating. You want to stay like this, and as you're walking and digesting your food, the hydrochloric acid is not bubbling up. The other thing that causes that to happen is overeating. So your stomach's there's only so much volume in the stomach, and the acid is trying to start breaking down the food, and so you're pushing that acid up towards against that sphincter, overeating. And then the worst combination, which I think we've all experienced maybe at Christmas or at Thanksgiving, which is overeating and then lying down. Recipe for acid reflux or heartburn. Eat until you're 2/3 full. This also helps with weight loss, but what does 2/3 full mean? It means that you start feeling like you're a little bit full, and this is the time where people think, okay, this means that I can eat more, but you start feeling like you're a little bit full, and that's when you stop eating. For most of the blue zones, this is a common characteristic, like the areas in the world where people live, the greater group or greater number of people are living past or live past 100 years old. There are about 9 commonalities. One of them is in Okinawa. And one of those commonalities that they found was they don't eat until they're full. In Okinawa, they eat until they're 80% full. So they're not eating until they're full with every meal, or just generally like never eat until they're full. They eat until they're not hungry anymore, which is a little bit different. So for better digestion, eat until you're 2/3 full, which means you start feeling a little bit full, and you use that as a signal or a trigger to mean, I'm going to stop now, instead of I can fit a little more in. And number 9, of course, as Jackie and I just discussed, do not drink while eating. Awesome. Does anyone have any questions about these 9 tips for better digestion? Yeah, go ahead.
Probably a silly question, but I'm going to ask anyway. Because I know everybody is a different size, right? But is there a general, sometimes you just don't know if you're 2/3 full. At least I don't. Sometimes I think, maybe I'm full. Maybe a little bit more. But is there a general size of the stomach? Like, say, if I put my food out in 3 cups, is that about the general size? And then I would eat 2 cups and not eat the 3rd cup. Is there a general average stomach size?
I think overall it's 4 cups. And you could think of your stomach as like, this is 4 cups of food as maybe the size of your fist. There is actually an entire calculation to figure out how much 2/3 full is based on your palm, which I don't remember right now, but I do have in a slide. But I just use the idea of I'm starting to feel full. I think everyone knows the feeling of being full. And just before you have that overly full feeling, there's just a step right before that. Like, I'm satisfied. Usually people think, but I want more, or I could have more. But you're not hungry anymore. There's just that that step before. I'm not hungry anymore, but I want more. The step before dessert, I'm not hungry anymore, but I want more. And sometimes the wanting more, I mean, obviously you're not hungry, so sometimes it's more of a mental, I want more, than a physical, I want more. So eat until your hunger is satisfied. Yes, go ahead, Glenn.
You moved by fairly quickly by, well, of course, don't drink while you're eating. I nearly always drink while I'm eating. Why shouldn't I?
Okay. So don't drink while you're eating. Because when you put that food in your mouth, you want the saliva to attack the food. A lot of people put the food in the mouth, chew twice, and then they drink, and then they're swallowing. So
I chew the stuff until it's really soft. I do the, I mean, I have a major problem with my son Arthur. He always eats twice as fast as he eats. Oh, eat faster, eat faster. So I'm eating slow enough.
right. But
I don't guzzle like 2 or 3 cups of liquid, but I drink a little bit.
right. So you've got the food in your mouth, the saliva starts attacking food, you put the liquid in, and you swallow before you drink? Oh, so you're drinking in between when you're eating. I mean, pardon me? Okay. The main idea is you don't want the saliva to be adulterated. You don't want to be swallowing early because you've put food in your mouth. You want as much saliva to be secreted as possible, and sometimes it isn't when you're drinking while you're eating. Go ahead, George.
When we were younger, a few years back,
Yes.
we were in the logging business, and we were in a hurry to get rich. So you never sat down to eat at lunch. You ate while you were working. You took a bite of your sandwich, you set the choker, got back on the cat, you took a shot of coffee. The next time you got off the cat, you took another bite of sandwich. And that's the way we lived. We broke absolutely every one of those 9 roads.
Right. And here you are today, still in good health. As I said, genetics definitely play a factor. But they have found, according to, I had a slide that had a quote on digestion, that we miss out on about 35% of the absorption of food if we're doing other things while we're eating. And I think that was a professor from Yale.
We had no time for digestion.
No time for digesting. You had things to do, which makes sense. Okay, does anyone have any other questions about eating? Go ahead, since you're eating right now.
Just the obvious fact that none of this will work if you're eating fast.
Right.
You have to slow down. And sometimes when we're serving, we're always.
The only rule we didn't break was rule.
You're always eating fast. This is like George's example, except you're not logging and prospecting and things. You're serving. Ooh, it'd be terrible to think that during this wonderful week. Oh, okay. We're making you break the digestion rules. Yes, go ahead, Thyra. Oh, sorry, Terrence, I didn't see you.
I've experienced much greater stomach sensitivity to the volume of the sweet
Yes.
after I have had a 3-day fast. That lasted all.
Yeah. So after the 3-day fast, is it a water fast, juice fast, or what kind of fasting?
More water and juice.
Juice and water fasting. So your stomach's probably shrinking a little bit. And then when you go to eat, you're suddenly aware that, oh, I'm getting full. Yeah. And part of that is just your stomach getting smaller as well. But if you continued overeating, then you wouldn't notice it as much, right? And I think part of that, one of the things that they do in Okinawa, at least as part of their tradition, is they tell themselves before they eat, only eat till you're 80% full. Something like Hari Hachibu Don't quote me on the Japanese there, but something like that, which is eat until 80%. So they put it in their minds in advance so that they're trying to be more sensitive about when they're not hungry anymore and satisfied, but could still have a little bit more. So as they're eating, now, I mean, if you did that every day, it would just be a habit. I had one patient in my weight loss group who, out of all of the things that we did, she hooked onto that the most, like not eating until she was really, really full, because she always ate until she was really full. And she liked that feeling of fullness. So her goal in eating was to hit that point, like, oh, okay, I'm full. That was great. And so that was a tough one for her to change. And she did everything else. We were doing intermittent fasting, 100% plant-based, etc. I mean, several steps throughout the course of 2 months, which I thought she'd find all of these other things difficult. That was the hardest thing for her because she loved the food, tasted great. So it was really hard not to go for that like objective of, oh, I'm really full. Okay, that feels good. And she finally mastered it at the end of 2 months. So during our one-on-one at the very end, she said she felt like she was such a success in the program. It wasn't about the weight loss. It was about being able to eat without kind of stuffing yourself. And that was a life changer for her. But she had to remind herself, I'm only eating until I'm 2/3 full. And then it became a habit. Yeah. Did you have a comment, Patty?
Yeah, just on the perception and being aware.
Mm-hmm.
That you're painful, and I,
And 9 o'clock we would have a dinner. And it wasn't a small dinner either.
at least
And
15 minutes.
then people play things, just laying down. And on 11 o'clock they wake up, they come to life.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, I read
Because
that
they
it
have to
takes
digest the food.
8
And
seconds,
at 1 o'clock they go to sleep.
something to get from your mouth to the end of your,
I've told them many times.
Okay.
and I'm wondering like how much longer and is there a difference? Because
I said that's the
some would
Russian
say,
way.
before you eat food, the knees first or feet first,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it all goes down the same tube and the same channels, but how long does it take to get home?
Yeah. For the actual mouth to the stomach, I'm not sure how long that takes, but I understand why your mom was saying 15 minutes. And so the belief about the 15 minutes or 20 minutes in terms of it registering that, hey, I feel a little bit full now, and it's about 20 minutes or so. And that's why I say eat slower, because you could eat a lot of calories in 20 minutes if you're a really fast eater. And then it's like, oh, I suddenly feel full. The idea is that the stomach has stretch receptors on it, like detectors. There are satiation or satiety receptors on the stomach and stretch receptors on the stomach. And your stomach's like a balloon, which is, Terrence, why when you were fasting, the balloon got smaller. It has a muscular layer. And when you're putting the food in, it's going to stretch and go bigger. And I feel like if I have this whole mechanistic cascade right, God kind of created it, if I could assume, in a way so we don't basically burst our stomach. I actually know someone who, they had like they had bariatric surgery where they had like the slip knot done, a band, thank you, on the stomach, and which is supposed to stop you from eating, but she burst the band. And after that, they cut out part of your stomach, etc. But don't want to go off on a different trajectory, but basically, so you don't burst your stomach. So your stomach starts expanding. The stretch receptors detect the stomach is expanding and basically send a message to the brain to say, you have to stop this person from eating anymore because the stomach's stretching. It can only stretch so much. The brain then causes the fat cells to secrete a hormone that we mentioned the other day called leptin, not lectin, leptin, Leptin. Leptin secreted by the adipose tissue or fat cells. And then you've got a lot of leptin flowing through your bloodstream, and leptin is the fullness hormone, and then you feel full. So generally that entire process, from the time the stomach starts stretching, takes about 20 minutes. So your mom was saying 15 minutes, so in about 20 minutes, you're going to feel full. And if you overfilled your stomach, you might feel really full. And that's when you've eaten a lot of food really fast and it kind of creeps up on you. And it's like, oh my gosh, not another bite, I just can't. But if you're eating slowly, you'll become a little more aware of that. Okay, leptin levels are rising. Okay, I am starting to feel full, and then it's easier to stop. So I think that's where your mom was kind of on 15 minutes. I think it's more like 20 minutes. What they found in people who are obese is that they have a leptin insensitivity. That's kind of common in the same way you can have an insulin insensitivity, which means even though we're feeling full and the leptin level is high, we still have the decision, you could say, to keep eating. So you're...
Other factors, though, because the United States population now is something like 2/3 obese.
Mm-hmm.
Like 60 years ago, they were.
Yes.
So obviously, it's not just the leptin. Maybe it is.
No, I'm not saying that that's what it is. But obviously it's the food and it's the amount of food. I mean, more processed food and the amount of food. But what I'm saying with the obesity is that we have the choice of, even though you're starting to feel full, of still eating. And so leptin levels are high, but you continue eating anyway. And then you develop an insensitivity. Leptin levels are like very, very, very high, trying to make you stop eating, but you're continuing to eat. And then you're not as sensitive to the feeling of fullness anymore. But basically, so one of the nice things with slowing it down is so that you can detect that feeling of fullness. But it is part of a decision, because you could decide, I'm feeling full, but you know what? I'm going to keep eating anyway. So, yeah, that's where the 15 minutes comes in. Or 20.
Permanent homes. We traveled all over the areas for different things. So
Oh, maybe you could talk in the mic.
I'm thinking of my people,
Mm-hmm.
Native people. We were nomadic and we traveled all over different areas in the territory and wherever the current food was and such. We never had permanent homes. So I once heard that a lot of our people are obese because of the DNA of being nomadic.
Oh, interesting. I don't know about that in particular, but I do know that your gut microbiome does play a part in it. And if you have certain, let's say, bacteria in the gut, those can put you at a greater risk of being obese. But nomadic, I'm not sure. That will be my research for tonight. Every night I have homework questions, which I will actually answer my homework from last night. Sorry, go ahead, Randy.
On that statement, you're absolutely right, because in the past years, the native people didn't have chocolate bars, pop, and stuff like this, and the sugar. So
Yeah.
they ate off the wilderness. Now, when their culture was that's all it was. Now, all the same fermented, they eat it, it goes to diabetes, everything else for them.
Yeah, but that's not particularly because of being nomadic, though. That's the introduction of ultra-processed foods, etc. Yeah, but then being nomadic does that have something to do with obesity? Being nomadic and obesity together? Then I'm not sure. The introduction of foods that weren't traditional, for sure. Ultra-processed foods, sugar foods that haven't been traditional foods, definitely a factor. But I'll do some research on that. Janie?
I was just thinking that all of the walking in the mountains,
Mm-hmm.
rivers, would make a huge difference to whatever you were eating at that, in
Yeah. I've had so many patients from other countries who, when they immigrate to Canada, they are not eating culturally the way that they used to. They gain weight, and I'll say, okay, well, when did you start putting on whatever, 40, 50, 60 pounds? I've been skinny my whole life, and then I moved here, and then that I changed my eating habits. So instead of eating, which is normally like rice and fish and beans or something like that, now you're eating hamburgers and French fries and ultra processed foods and snacks and chips. And that was the beginning of being overweight for decades. So, yeah, I think there's a reason why the standard American diet is called SAD. But then part of the answer to that is, okay, what about removing those things? But part of it's addiction, part of it's a habit, because there are most likely chemicals in that food that cause addictive cravings. So it's hard to remove them as well. Pardon me?
That's why we're here, listening.
Oh, that's why you're here. All right. Yes. Go ahead, Patty.
Well, there's huge stimuli to eat processed food and sugars, like everywhere.
Commercials everywhere, billboards everywhere.
But you think of the day, like when food was scarce, before we had refrigeration and where, people ate a lot when there was food there, because there might not be food again in the winter for a couple of weeks. So of course, if they killed an animal, you're going to eat lots.
Yeah.
So that would, I think that would be just
Well, also, there'd be a
Flexible.
certain amount of,
elastic.
Yeah. That's where the research comes in.
a certain
yeah.
amount of fasting was natural to that situation where people, I mean, we don't have to eat every day, but we think we do. But people that were, I know I've read a lot of anthropology, and tribal people often fast for a day or two throughout the week.
Yep.
It's not uncommon.
Go ahead.
So I'm a nurse, and I often tell people that when they're diabetic, everybody should be on a diabetic diet. It should be like a standard diet, not just for people with diabetes. And today's market is focused on money gain, like the fast foods and putting things in food to make you want more. And I tell them to try go for the $100 or 100-kilometer diet. Like anything you can get within 100 kilometers is the best for you.
Yeah. Anything natural you could get in 100 kilometers. And removing the ultra processed foods. I like the creator's diet, which is whatever's coming off of a tree, a bush, under the ground, etc. Go for those foods instead of the man-created diet, which is, potato chips, corn chips, things created in a factory. But I like that idea because with my weight loss patients, I work with blood sugar regulation, even if they're not diabetic. So you want to avoid insulin spikes and avoid glucose spikes. Go ahead. You're saying they're ex-cigarette companies?
Yeah, I was reading something about that as well. And when they lost their advertising opportunities,
Right.
they learned about, sports and cigarettes.
Addicting people.
Like napping with a cigarette, but they had to switch those tactics to food when they could make much money.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like chemists who are searching for the bliss point, which is a real thing. They're adding different chemicals, sugars, so you will want to go back to that food. But if it's too sweet, you don't continue to buy it. So the bliss point is a certain level of sweetness that is addictive, that makes you want more, but it's not so sweet that you don't continue to buy the product. So definitely, I mean, there's a lot of strategy involved. Yes, go ahead, Henry.
I remember a documentary from Britain. It's about 30 or so years ago. That at that time they had small burgers, say for 80 cents.
Burgers.
Yeah, burgers
Okay.
or with other fast food. But they want to increase their profits, so they were doubling the size
Mm.
of the burgers, so
Mhm.
the profits were larger.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tricks.
It's not healthy.
Right. I mean, I think we all know that actually, I probably shouldn't say too much, but I think everybody knows what's going on. You know, when I was a kid, one of the treats, what I saw as a treat, but I now know it's a mistreat, was to go to McDonald's. I used to beg my mom, can we please just go to McDonald's? My mom grew up in South America and came to Canada when she was about 20 or 21, which means that, she kind of really adopted a Canadian diet. We had Kraft dinner, macaroni and cheese, like several times per week, Campbell's soup every morning, a grapefruit with a boiled egg, but sometimes rice and chicken. And I was like, I want to go to McDonald's and have French fries and a cheeseburger and a sundae. And it just, I don't think it was the money. It was just like, no, we're not going to McDonald's. Oh, but all my friends go to McDonald's. So for me, it was amazing when we went to McDonald's. I was like, yeah. And they had like the McDonald's Playhouse where all the kids would go and play. And you see these commercials of the big yellow arches. And it was like, McDonald's is just the place to be. So as a teenager, I went to work at McDonald's, but I worked at Burger King. So it was kind of like not quite the same. But there was so much promotion of, at least when I was younger and I watched a lot of TV, of McDonald's as like the cool place, the place to be for kids. You go there, you have a lot of fun, you get the Happy Meal, you get a toy, and it really wasn't so much about the food at all. It was just this whole hype that was there to get you in there to eat the food. And then when I was much older, then I started gaining a lot of weight because I became a frequent flyer at McDonald's and Burger King. But then I realized, wait, this food just isn't good for you. And I felt like I'd been sold a dummy product, kind of like it really wasn't about the food. It's this whole marketing thing to make you want to go there.
Their ads are extremely expensive, and they've got a lot of psychology behind them.
A lot of psychology. It's like about belonging. All the kids are at McDonald's. I want to belong and get a Happy Meal. Go ahead. Yes. Yeah. I had McDonald's French fries about maybe 8 years ago as a treat. So I wanted an experiment to see would I still love it the way that I used to. And it tasted like cardboard. Like I was so disappointed. But I probably threw some of it out, but I felt like it was a bit of a waste. I had the ketchup on. I was like, this is what I had, the salt, the ketchup. It tasted terrible. Yeah, and my body didn't respond the same way at all. Go ahead, George.
We attended a health conference here about a month ago, and we were at some health seminars, very good ones. And the lady there said that potato chips are one of the most toxic things in food. What makes them so toxic? Now, they're just potatoes, salt, and a little bit of oil. What makes them toxic?
I think it's beyond the oil. Deep fried, saturated in oil, the type of oil that they're using. But you can make your own potato chips at home. Not that I encourage eating like a lot of potatoes all the time. But you can slice your potatoes really thin, add a little bit of olive oil on them, maybe, a little bit of sea salt, bake it, and there you have homemade potato chips.
Is it the deep frying that does?
I think it's the deep frying, the type of oil. The chips are saturated in the oil as well. So
I eat a lot of chips.
you eat a lot of potato chips?
The secret
George, I know you're the genetic factor here that's throwing everything off. So now people are going to have a neuro association between potato chips and longevity in their brain, which is, I'm trying to break these connections here.
Unfortunately, we don't have a McDonald's in this town.
Fortunately.
Very good.
So this is what Dr. Rangan Chatterjee was saying. So we don't want that association between longevity and potato chips. Maybe it's working for George. Instead, we want the association between more like dark berries and healthy food and longevity. Yes, go ahead. Oh, right. Probably, is it Miss Vicky's? Like a more healthy option for potato chips. So Dr. Chatterjee, what's that?
I was just going to say about the chips, I think it's a lot about the volume, because we're talking about the other foods and the teams of psychologists figuring out what exact thickness of chips,
How-
it's the exact
the
amount of
crunch.
barbecue spice,
Mm-hmm.
level of crunch, the shake that makes your hand keep going in the bed. Like nobody just takes like half, 3 chips and that's all they
You think you're going to. Yeah. You can't have just one. And I think they figured that out with like chips like Pringles. That's why they have that size and that many. Anyway, we could go on. Yes, terrible. Or
What George said, where it's just salt oil.
No.
There's,
yeah. So George, maybe you're eating a healthier chip. Or maybe not. We won't delve too much into it. Yes?
Well, I've never ate at McDonald's in my life. That's why I can eat potato chips.
There you go. The key to longevity is maybe stay away from McDonald's. So what Dr. Chatterjee was saying was that you use a hook. So some kind of habit that you already have. He used coffee, and again, I'm not encouraging that. And then he rewarded himself with the coffee. But through using a hook, we work with the idea of neuro association. That's supposed to say neuro, not euro, as in European. Neuro association. This means you find something that you're already doing. It's already a trigger. And then you hook your new behavior onto that pre-existing habit. So my homework might be, or just a thought, think of what you would like to, the habit you would like to implement. And is there a pre-existing habit that you can hook that habit onto? And then part of the formula was I said that you first visualize, and then you act, and then you reward. So for him, he visualized, he made it easy, he acted, then he rewarded himself with that hot beverage, let's say. It's important to first believe and perceive that making the change is possible. And with some of my patients, as I said, when they don't believe and they don't perceive that they can actually make the change, they're in the program, but they're like, "This is never going to work for me." Like, okay, we have to work on this first step, which is believing, being willing to release that old identity. That's part of your belief and practice within your own locus of control. So we said that one of the most important things that Dr. Emmy Werner found for resilience was the children felt like they had a strong locus of control, meaning they believed they could make a change in their life, even though what was happening outside their life really wasn't in their control. So believing and perceiving that making this change is possible is an important first step. Whoops. And then, oops. Oh. Then every single time you do it, celebrate. So you want that dopamine to be secreted. I did it. Yes. Don't let one little success go without the dopamine secretion, so it'll be easier next time. And rebuke that old habit as you replace it with the new one. Okay, I've used, a little bit of religious word here, but when I say rebuke the old habit as you replace it with the new one, it's more something like this. So you're saying that old habit, like going to bed late, yuck. So instead of thinking, I love that thing, but I'm trying not to do it anymore, you're changing your association with that thing intentionally. Eating those cookies, yuck, I hate it. And you want some kind of association that's bad with the habit that you're trying to let go of. And then a good kind of promoting good feeling with the habit you're trying to implement. Getting enough high quality sleep. Yes, I love it. I love it. And then the first time you do get that high quality sleep, you reward yourself. So rebuking that bad habit and rewarding that new habit so that it's easier. It's hard to let go of something when you're saying to yourself, I still love it, but I'm trying to let it go. But, I wish it were different. I do want to do that thing. You want an association between bad things with that old thing and good things with that new thing. Hopefully that makes sense. It seems simple. Celebrating causes the release of dopamine. Whoops. And, did I do it again? I've put all these lovely little time elements in. Dopamine release will make it easier the next time, and the time after that, and the time after that, and time after that. Most important thing is consistency, and then it becomes automatic. So I like that Dr. Rangan Chatterjee said that you can start with just 5 minutes. You're starting small, and then with some of his patients, they go beyond 5 minutes of doing whatever that thing is, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, etc. And for exercise, he started with 5 minutes. I love this quote by Lisa Nichols. When it comes to success, there's no elevator to the top. There's only stairs. So the idea is that it's more like one step at a time, especially when it comes to habit change. So you're one step at a time, and this is based on the trans-theoretical model of change, which is a model that's used to help people quit smoking. The first step might be thinking. You think whatever gifts that you have or whatever abilities that you have to produce ideas for this habit change will give you enough time and space to allow the thought process to develop. Basically, you're thinking, I believe that it's possible. And then you're thinking of ways that it's possible. So that's the first step. And then the next step after that is you start looking into, okay, how can I make this habit change? There are about 4 or 5 steps to change. How can I make this habit change? Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could join a group. Maybe I could get my buddy to come exercise with me. The next step is action. So that second step is called predetermination. Third step, determination. I am going to do this. Okay, I'm taking an action step. I am going to call my buddy and say, hey, can you meet me tomorrow at 7 a.m. to go for a walk, because I'm starting to walk through town every morning because I want to implement whatever it is, exercise, just 10-minute walk. And then the next step is the action step. You actually do go for the walk. And after you go for the walk, yeah, I did it. Celebration. And then the final step is just maintenance. And with the maintenance step, you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And those are steps to change. It starts with thinking and believing, and then looking into how to do it. Some people skip all these steps, and they just make the change like that. Like, as of tomorrow, I'm doing this, and boom, they're off. But for a lot of people, they think about it, they come up with strategy, they look into it a little bit, they act, and then after that, it's consistency and maintenance. Does that make sense? Yes, go ahead, Glenn.
I knew a guy who was an alcoholic, and
Yes.
He didn't have any plans on quitting.
He had no plans on quitting.
Right. He went to
Okay.
the doctor at one point, though. And he was getting phlebitis a little bit in his legs. And the doctor said, well, Frank, I'm going to have to take your license away.
Driving license? Okay.
Because you can't drive like that. And at that moment,
Boom.
stopped drinking.
Yeah.
He just never drank again. It's like that was his manhood, being able to drive. If he couldn't drive, so anyways, that was. I actually think this is not dopamine exactly. This is like with my cat and the dog. There's an away from kind of thing that leads people to habit as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a person might see they go to the doctor and the doctor says, you don't lose 20 pounds, you're going to be dead in a couple months.
Yeah.
That could be a sufficient thing, a motivator. The motivator doesn't have to be just, ooh, that felt good. It could be.
Oh, no. Just as Dr. Chatterjee said, it could be like a life event or something sudden that has this strong impact.
Yeah.
And then people change. But if it's outside of that and it's just your normal life and there are no horrible consequences, then people find it difficult to change. I've even had a patient who had cancer, had her kidney removed, had a heart attack, and was still smoking. Like at the hospital, asked somebody to roll her out in her wheelchair she could have.
You see it
a
at
smoke.
the hospitals. The people with
Right.
their little
Their
dollies
IV,
inside.
and
basically
they're still
outside
smoking. Right. So it doesn't always work. Sometimes somebody's told, you know what, if you don't do that, you're going to die in the next 5 months. But for some people, that is like enough of a possible life change impact that's the end of that. But outside of these major, significant events, when it's just daily life, nothing major happening, then you have to work on it a little bit usually. Yes, go ahead.
I had a patient who had cancer and she couldn't even lift up her cigarette. So she had to smoke through the hole in her neck and have the tube down to the ashtray.
Wow. Yeah. So doesn't work for everyone. Actually, unfortunately, my uncle was diagnosed with cancer. He ended up dying from cancer from smoking, but it was that kind of condition. Yes, go ahead, George.
Well, there's a big difference in people. Now, my father-in-law was a heavy smoker.
Yes.
But we were guiding 2 Americans sheep hunting up in the mountains, and we were sitting there watching these big rams across the slide, and all of a sudden he got a coughing fit. Well, of course, that scared the rams.
Right.
Well, he was upset, I'll tell you. I mean, really upset about scaring these rams. He blew the hunt.
Right.
When we got home, he said, I'm quitting smoking.
That's
We'd heard
that.
that before. But he had a big tobacco can. He put his pipes, his cigarettes, his lighter in that can and screwed the lid on, and he never smoked again.
Right. I suppose it's probably hard to hunt. That was a prime opportunity that.
Well, it was a traumatic
blew.
event for him because here it was, he ruined the hunt.
Yes, exactly. So traumatic is people are different. Like some people have a significant event and they still keep going, just as you said. But for him, that was enough of like a sentimentality or so important to him, and he blew that opportunity that he said that's never going to happen again. So each person is a little bit different. And then sometimes it's just trying to figure out, well, what is it that's going to help this person? You're like at this extreme, but still doing that thing, that's kind of ruining your health and ruining your life. And that brings us to this idea of 2 roads when it comes to habit change. And there you are, the road of your current life, doing the things that you're doing right now that might not be producing the outcomes that you want. And over here, the road of doing something different in your new life where you could have wonderful outcomes and experience life in a different way. And I like what the doctor said on that video, and just that woman who only took 5 minutes every day suddenly experienced a different type of day than she normally did. Like the rest of the day was really good. And just that was enough to make her think, oh, that felt great. Like you don't know how good the different feels until you experience it. Like for me, when I was about 60 pounds heavier than I am now, I didn't know how good it would feel to, be able to run 10K or half marathon or something like that. Not that I went from being 60 pounds overweight to running a half marathon in a day, but it's just such a different life experience when you're healthy, and when I was no longer dealing with like maybe mobility issues or losing my breath or, thighs rubbing together or whatever it was. So once you have a taste of that, sometimes that's enough. But we all have the choice, the old life or your new life. Did you have a comment? So here we are at that choice of your current life and a new life. And I said that sometimes you go into the chrysalis stage. So for some people, it's like that. Okay, you know what? That's enough. I've had enough of that. And you're on your way down that new road down New Life Boulevard, let's say. But for some people, it is a transformative experience where you're going into the chrysalis stage, which is a stage of change, and you're slowly developing those habits, and then you're going to come out of that different and experiencing life differently. And maybe in your old life, there's your old job, there is the predictable future because you keep doing the things that you used to do. That old definition of insanity, doing what you continue to do but expecting a different outcome. But you already know that that it's very predictable, and yet somehow you want change. So most people want change, but they're not really doing anything. Yes, go ahead, Henry.
That happens to me once. I was quite a long smoker. I tried it with different times, with stopping and then starting again and stop. And then I got those patches. I did not smoke then, but I took the patches.
The patch, okay.
Those patches on your arm, And I didn't feel good about it. So I put away the patches and never smoked again.
And that was it?
That was it.
Okay. So the patch worked in some ways, because the patch made you...
Well.
Amen. So the patch made you feel bad enough that... So it did kind of act as an intermediary step towards quitting because you felt bad, and that was that. I've said in the new road, that's where your God-given destiny is. Just a suggestion that maybe part of your God-given destiny is just that God desires for you to have a healthy life down the New Life Boulevard. So maybe making that decision that I'm going to make these changes, and perhaps God desires for me to have a better life or a healthier life, and part of going down that new road is experiencing life a little bit differently. But as I said, for some people, they have to go through the chrysalis stage. So you might ask yourself, I want to paint a different picture of my life. I want to paint a better picture of my life. What are the things that are blocking me from attaining whatever this thing is? And you can make a list. What are the things that are blocking me from getting better sleep? What are the things that are blocking me from exercising? Like, for example, I had to think of it. When I wanted to exercise, what was blocking me from exercising? It was going home and getting too relaxed, especially in Ottawa in the winter once you go inside. Like, I really didn't want to go out in the minus 40 weather anymore. But just that was the thing. I had to think, what is it that's making it so hard to go to the gym? Because I really, really wanted to go. Okay, I'm going to remove that thing. What is the thing that makes it difficult for me to get to sleep earlier? Or whatever that blockage is. At one point, I was asking myself, what is it that makes it hard for me to go to bed earlier? This, honestly, and I thought, what are all the things I do before bed? Okay, I really like brushing my teeth. I really like flossing, but that's only 2 minutes. That's not it. But I used to really enjoy calling a friend and talking about my day. But that conversation, I'd always think it's just going to be a 5-minute conversation. Hey, how was your day? Oh, it was really cool. I did this. Really, what'd you do? I did that. Okay, I'm getting ready for bed now. Okay, bye. But somehow that 5-minute conversation always turned into like maybe a 45 or 1 hour conversation. But I would fool myself the next day by thinking, this time it's only going to be 5 minutes. So when I was talking, I'd actually mute. I'd be brushing my teeth, flossing, like I'm doing all these things, thinking 5 minutes tonight for definitely. It was always an hour. So I had to ask, what are things that are blocking me from getting better sleep? Okay, it's this phone call. That is so important to me. Well, I think I'm just going to have to delete that phone call and put it somewhere else. Like I'm going to have to call that person earlier. So, because no matter what, it's going to end up being an hour, even though I'd like it to be 5 minutes. So, making that change, and now we talk during the day, which is awesome, while I'm doing all kinds of other things. But you could ask yourself, okay, what's the thing that I want, the thing I'm desiring, and I believe that it's possible. I'm going to take the action step. I'm going to reward myself. But is there a blockage there that's stopping me from achieving that thing? And usually it's something practical. There's something like, if you've done the psychological work, you're ready. There's some kind of little thing in your schedule that's blocking you. Like for Dr. Chatterjee, he just set everything up so it's first thing in the morning instead of trying to do it at night. And then it worked for him. Well, you know what? It's so funny because it's like you fool yourself into thinking tonight it's going to be different, you know? It's only going to be 5 minutes. And that went on for, finally I realized this is one of the factors that is making it hard for me to get to bed early. The other thing was I really enjoyed, just not to make it all about me, but I really enjoyed flossing my teeth while watching just a little bit of a show on Netflix. So that was also fooling myself that I'm only going to watch 5 minutes of this show on Netflix. And I'd be flossing my teeth, but ultimately it was like a 30-minute kind of thing. Maybe 3 weeks or so. It was first detecting that this is the thing, and then trying, which wasn't working, and then finally admitting that this isn't going to work. Like every time I will watch the full Netflix show, even though I intend to only watch, 4 minutes. So, and then after about maybe a month. And part of it was just letting go of that idea, like, okay, I'm just going to floss my teeth without the show. So it did take a while. But part of that whole step was just admitting that it's not like I'm trying, but I'm not actually achieving the change in making that hour conversation 5 minutes. So this has to go somewhere else. Changing habits is about our psychology and basically about our brain chemistry. So our psychology, I believe that it's possible. I'm releasing that part of me that says this is part of my identity. And then brain chemistry, I'm using dopamine to work for me and not against me. Whatever that habit is, I'd encourage you to, instead of what going to bed late, place whatever your habit is here. What having a cigarette, what drinking the coffee, what, watching that whole movie, and then to practice going, yuck, no, I hate that, even if you don't, at least at the beginning. And I'd also encourage you to place what you want here. Drinking herbal teas in the morning. Yeah, I love it. Just give it a try. Yes, go ahead, Glenn.
What she loves is that the host is flirting with her. But
she loves wearing that red dress.
That too.
Yes.
What I wanted to say is that there's the model that I'm sure you're familiar with, the 12-step program.
Yes.
And this 12-step program is based on, if you want, and then these are for serious habits. They're not just little things like I'd like to maybe exercise a bit more or whatever, but things like this is destroying my life.
Yes.
And they basically say that unless you have a spiritual experience, you will not make it.
Right.
And apparently it only works about 20% of the time too, even though lots more people do it. But if you don't have a spiritual reawakening, you're going to be mired in this thing forever.
Right.
And I can see it with people that are into things like crack. I mean, it just wrecks their life. Their teeth all fall, or meth heads or something like that. They're ruined by the thing.
Yeah.
And unless they have a spiritual awakening.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure some people quit habits without being a believer,
My friend
but
stopped being a drinker because he thought he was his driver's license. I mean, there's other reasons, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, that model.
yeah, the 12-step program.
Put in that idea that spiritual awakening is something that we're not particularly factoring that in. That can be a powerful endorphin thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
It feels really good. They have to feel really good with it, or else it's not.
I mean, I do think that God helps you to break habits, for sure. And then realizing this habit, whatever it is beyond me. So I'm going to ask the Lord to be stronger than I am and to help. And I also think that he can make what used to be tasteful to you extremely distasteful. And that's what the putting that habit in and saying yuck is all about. But I think God can do that for you, which is just like biblical. The things I love, the things I loved, I now hate. So, but part of that is also a transformative process. If you're hating the things that you used to love, it's like you're becoming a different person. So definitely can be part of habit change, for sure. Did anyone have any other comments? Oh, I'm not saying hate the person. Hate the habit. Yeah. And so God can switch it from I used to love smoking to now it's repugnant to me. I mean, not for everyone. Sometimes they still smell cigarette and go, oh, you know what? It smells great. But they don't want it. Like the urge is taken away. So I want to talk about two habits. One of them is sleeping and the other one's exercise, which we've touched on a little bit. And someone had a question, I think, Terrence, you had a question about circadian rhythm, which I said we get further into. And I want to talk about these two things and then wrap up a little bit with the psychology of resilience and how it affects mental health, since it's a mental health conference, if we have enough time, because it's 7:30, so we'll see. So starting with sleep. Sleep affects our stress response, our mood, and also it affects our mental health. We're basically not at our best when we're not getting enough sleep. So what really happens when we sleep? So I went through the 4 stages of sleep before. So we go through different stages when we sleep. Maybe we could just close it because that window there is open. We go through different stages when we sleep. I'm sure that most people here have heard of REM. I'm saying the sleep stage, not the band. Ba-dum-bum. It's one of the sleep stages. Basically, when you're falling asleep and you're in light sleep, you're in stage 1. And this information is not from me. It's from the National Sleep Foundation. There are 2 types of sleep. There's REM sleep, which accounts for about 25% of our sleep time. And then there's non-REM sleep, which is about 75% of our sleep time. REM stands for rapid eye movement, in case you don't know. So non-REM sleep, which is 75% of our sleep time, has 4 stages. Stage number 1, this is where, and it used to be 4 stages, but now they've combined 3, 4 to be deep sleep, so 3 stages. And 1, formerly called stage 1, this is where hypnic myoclonia, also called nocturnal myoclonus, or sleep jerks, you might know it as, occur. You're falling asleep and you wake yourself up because you're moving so much, but it's a jerky kind of movement. Not sure why it happens, but it could be associated with excessive alcohol. So it tends to happen when people are drinking, too much caffeine, exercising too close to bedtime, stress or anxiety. This is a stage between being awake and falling asleep, also known as light sleep. Stage 2. Stage 2 of non-REM sleep, now known as N2, is a period of light sleep right before you drop down into deep sleep. Your heartbeat and your breathing slow, muscles relax even further, body temperature drops, eye movement stops completely. Brainwave activity slows down, but it's marked by these brief bursts of electrical activity. We spend more time of our repeated sleep cycle in stage 2 than in other sleep stages. And then after that, you drop down into deep sleep, known as N3, but it used to be called stages 3 and stages 4. That's a period of deep sleep that you need to feel refreshed in the morning. Here, sleep is the deepest, it's the most restorative. This stage occurs in longer periods during the first half of the night. Your heartbeat and your breathing slow down to their lowest levels during sleep. Your muscles are relaxed, and it may be difficult to awaken someone who's in a really deep sleep. Your brain waves become even slower, and a few other things occur during deep sleep. Blood pressure drops. So this is going into deep sleep, and having a certain amount of deep sleep every night can help to control blood pressure. Blood supply to the muscles increases, tissue growth and repair occurs, energy is restored, protein regeneration occurs, muscle repair occurs. If you're someone who is repairing or recovering from an injury, you need a lot of this type of sleep. This is where hormones are released, like growth hormone, which is essential for growth and development, including muscle development. So as you can see, this is a very important stage in sleep. And after that, then you go into REM. I won't read everything that happens in REM, but the first REM stage occurs about 90 minutes after you fall asleep, and then it reoccurs about every 90 minutes. So a basic sleep cycle is about 90 minutes, but you spend more and more time in REM later in the night. So during REM, your eyes are moving really quickly from side to side. Mixed frequency brainwave activity becomes closer to being awake. This is one of the reasons why people might say, I just woke up out of a dream. Your breathing becomes faster, irregular, heart rate and blood pressure start to increase near to the level that it's at when you're awake. Most of your dreaming happens during REM, although some can happen in non-REM, and at that time your body becomes immobile, relaxed, your muscles are turned off, basically, so you're not acting out your dreams. You could say it's like being temporarily paralyzed. Interestingly, as you age, you spend less of your time in REM. Memory consolidation is most likely happening during REM and non-REM sleep. REM is important. It provides energy to the brain and body, supports daytime performance. All of those stages that I just mentioned are called like one sleep cycle. And we go through many of these sleep cycles every night. As a matter of fact, it could be 3 to 5 times in one night or even more. But with each sleep cycle, you spend less and less time in that deep sleep stage. So you want to go to bed early so you're catching as much of that time in deep sleep earlier in the night. What can happen if you're not getting enough sleep? Well, one of the things that can occur is a lack of sleep can affect our mood. If you're deprived of sleep, and this is more ongoingly deprived, it can make you moody, emotional, quick-tempered. Even one day of poor sleep, the next day you notice you might not have the patience that you had normally. But with chronic sleep deprivation, it can affect your mood, and then that can lead to anxiety or even depression, which can then escalate. So sleep could be a major factor in helping to avoid, in many cases, anxiety and depression. Without sleep, memory issues, people will experience that it's more difficult to have like more of a foggy kind of mind. A lack of sleep can negatively impact short-term and even long-term memory. Difficulties with thinking, difficulties with concentrating, People tend to have more accidents when they're not getting really high quality sleep. They're not as alert. High blood pressure. So we notice during deep sleep, your blood pressure goes the lowest that it will be during the entire night. And without getting that deep sleep chronically, then blood pressure tends to be higher. A weakened immune system, and it goes on. Risk for diabetes. A lack of sleep affects your body's release of insulin, which helps to lower blood sugar. So chronic poor sleep can put you at a higher risk for type 2 diabetes. Lower sex drive, weight gain. There's an association between sleep deprivation and weight gain. There was actually one study done, and it was on university students where they were sleep deprived. 5 hours of sleep was the most they were allowed to get for 5 days, and they gained nearly 2 pounds in 5 days. A risk of heart disease and, of course, poor balance. So all of these unwanted effects just from poor sleep. And I say this because poor sleep, as we saw, is associated with certain people with a greater risk of depression and anxiety. And getting better sleep can help. Benefits of sleep: there's a greater removal of waste products from brain cells when we're sleeping. Why is sleep important? The lymphatic system causes the release of CSF, cerebral spinal fluid, which basically washes out all the debris from the brain. So your brain is going through something like a brain car wash every night, and you want that time so that happens. Adequate amounts of sleep, especially deep sleep, can decrease dementia risk. And this is according to Johns Hopkins research. Sleep deprivation puts you at a 33% increased risk for dementia. Adequate amounts of sleep can aid in maintaining healthy blood pressure and blood sugar levels, as we just saw. According to Johns Hopkins, those who are sleep deprived are more likely to have high blood pressure, diabetes, and narrowed blood vessels. Adequate amounts of quality sleep can contribute to happiness and a better memory. With sleep deprivation, there's a greater risk, as I just said, of depression, of irritability, of anxiety, and of forgetfulness. And adequate quality sleep contributes to a stronger immune system. With sleep deprivation, there are fewer active immunity protectors called our natural killer cells. You're 3 times more likely to catch a cold. Wow. I bet everybody wants to go to sleep early tonight. Sleep, it's something we have to make a habit of. It's a gift that you give yourself every day. It seems natural, but you have to work to put yourself into a good rhythm, similar to any habit. We think it should be natural, but it takes effort to just keep that sleep cycle going, especially if you're trying to break habits that make it difficult for you to get into a good rhythm. The same could be said for our own daily cycles, the times you're exercising, the times you're eating. Set yourself up by getting into a good routine. We can help our body's natural cycle by doing things as close to the body's set time as possible, which is called our circadian rhythm. Of course, this would be different if you are a night worker or a shift worker, etc. Then you're not necessarily working with your body's circadian rhythm. You're creating a different rhythm. The circadian rhythm is our body's natural clock. It's like your body's 24-hour physiological clock. It regulates when certain hormones or chemicals are released. That can affect your mood, how sleepy you are, how awake you feel, your energy levels, even your cognitive function, how sharp you feel intellectually and mentally. The major hormones include serotonin and melatonin. This is not an exact circadian rhythm, but it just gives you a general idea of what's happening 24 hours, and this is an example of a circadian rhythm like a clock, where if you start at 6 a.m., shortly after rising, melatonin secretion stops, so you're not sleepy anymore. Earlier in the day, you have the highest testosterone secretion. This is why doing big things earlier in the day is probably a better idea. It might be easier. Later in the day, you don't have as much testosterone, so it's harder Testosterone affects our drive, our maybe our oomph or your go, 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 and also your energy levels as well. So more energy, more drive earlier in the day. We're most alert just before noon. We have really good coordination after noon. Cardiovascular efficiency, muscle strength as before the evening. Blood pressure is starting to go up before the evening, which is why it's a great idea to go to bed early and get into that deep sleep earlier in the night when blood pressure is going to go down. Body temperature is high, but then melatonin secretion starts about 2 hours before bedtime. Melatonin starts ramping up, and melatonin brings your body temperature down. And as we said, the best body temperature to sleep in, and this according to Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford University, is about 18 degrees Celsius. Melatonin is starting to bring your temperature down, ramping up about 2 hours before you go to bed and kind of hitting greatest secretion right around bedtime. If you're consistently going to bed at the same time every night. If you're doing shift work and sometimes you're going to bed at one time and sometimes at another time, then your melatonin secretion is kind of thrown off, so it's not always ramping up at the same time. But a good test of this would be if you're someone who usually goes to bed at the same time, wakes up at the same time, and then you go to an event, let's say like a wedding. And when you go to a wedding, you're expected, at least most of the weddings that I've gone to stay up late. Everybody's dancing, it's noisy. If you're at the wedding and it's noisy and you're falling asleep, then it means that your body is secreting that melatonin, and melatonin is ramping up saying it's time for you to go to sleep. But the event is saying stay awake. But just a good sign that you're in a good cycle and melatonin is being secreted, and so your body's in a good rhythm, if that makes sense. Light basically plays a large role in the synchronization of the circadian clock, which is why I had recommended blackout blinds, maybe using a sleep mask. You want to sleep in as dark environment as possible. Light helps with tracking in the circadian clock of the day, even tracking of seasonal changes, helping to regulate sleep. So where and when light environments are irregular, we can experience issues in things like mood and in sleep. Problems in our circadian rhythm can even cause learning deficits. Especially for kids, this is part of the regularity of kids going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time as well. One of the key players for sleep, which we talked about a little bit 2 nights ago, is melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone which causes drowsiness, lowers your body temperature, and helps you to fall asleep. It helps more with sleep onset than actually stopping sleep disruption. So that's why some people end up taking melatonin to help them fall asleep. Best times to sleep. So apparently sleep between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. will actually affect dopamine levels beneficially for the day. Let's say the day where you're waking up at 4 a.m. This could be one of the reasons why people say, I had an amazing sleep, I went to bed early, and the next day, aside from all the things we just talked about, the next day I was happy, I had a really good day, I was in a good mood. So that next day, your dopamine level is going to be higher, and dopamine, as we said, is the pleasure hormone. So you're going to have possibly, I don't know what would happen the next day unless terrible things happen, but you'd probably be able to maybe respond to them better. But you'll have a higher dopamine levels the day after getting a sleep where you're going to bed earlier in the day. Earlier in the night, I should say. So you might think this, I might not get a lot of sleep, but you know what? At least I make up for it because I exercise. And in dieters, they've found lack of sleep causes a hormone switch to occur. So I'd said one of the things on that slide was lack of sleep causes weight gain. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone that we mentioned. Leptin is the fullness hormone. With the lack of sleep, cortisol increases, and ghrelin and leptin, it's like they switch, meaning you get it's hard for your hunger to be turned off. This creates a profile of overeating. In one study, participants ate 300 to 400 extra calories per meal when they weren't getting a good sleep the night before. You gain cravings, feeling hungrier, but because leptin is not as, the amount or dosing of leptin not as high, you're hungry and you never feel full, which I've experienced when I haven't gotten a lot of sleep before. And you might say, it doesn't matter, I'm going to lose it in the gym and get shredded. Also, overall, with dieters who have not gotten enough sleep regularly, they may lose weight, but they end up losing muscle and keeping or even gaining fat. And in some of the programs that I do, we use an in-body machine like the one that we have here. And we'll take the in-body, like do the assessment at the beginning, the assessment at the end. And it's interesting because people will lose weight, but they've actually lost muscle and gained fat. And sometimes those are people who are struggling to get better sleep or just not getting enough sleep during that time. Studies with sleep deprivation and effects on the brain's hedonic eating centers have found that when patients were shown pictures of different types of food when they were sleep deprived, then that hedonic eating center in the brain, the center that wants things in excess, let's say, would light up. Knowing they'd be eating the foods, the answers were assumed to be honest, so they were asking about how they felt about these foods. They found that the hedonic centers in the brains were lighting up. Impulse control center in the brain was shutting down. So it's like, I want it, I want it, I want it. And that control in the brain that would stop you from overeating was shutting down. The result was hedonic eating without regular control, overeating without the control you would normally have to stop eating. What they found, that lack of sleep causes a similar effect on appetite than the effect that people have after smoking marijuana, also known as the munchies. Cannabis stimulates the appetite. We have natural cannabis-like compounds in our body and brain called endocannabinoids, and endocannabinoids increase with sleep restriction also, affecting our hunger and our appetite. And this study was called Sleep Restriction Alters Plasma Endocannabinoid Concentration. And those were the findings. Not getting enough sleep, and basically you have something similar to the munchies. Exercise and sleep. If we could make, there are many habit changes, but I'd said in this, near the beginning of this week, maybe choosing just one or two habit changes. Exercise and sleep. You could consider them to be treasures for better mental health. Treasures for better mental health. Exercise and sleep. This mammal doesn't really have to think of exercise and mental health. They exercise naturally. We have to put in an effort. So I wanted to talk about some studies that have been done on exercise. But generally, when it comes to exercise and making a habit change, we might feel like this. Hey, Bob, is that 20-minute workout? Yeah, I feel so good when I watch it. We find that it's hard to make that change. We want to exercise. And sometimes we fool ourselves. At one point, I watched exercise videos, and at least I felt like I've done something. But I wasn't exercising. But we fool ourselves sometimes when it comes to exercise or implementation of a habit. So I also have a friend who instead of doing that thing, whatever it is, he will read about that thing. It's much easier to eat instead. Show of hands, how many people would rather eat than exercise? I think a lot of people would prefer to do that. But sometimes we substitute what we want to do with something else that's close, and then we lose the motivation to do that thing. Like this friend, instead of exercising, they'll read about exercising. Like, I'm going to do a little research project on exercising and the benefits of exercising, and this will be the step towards exercising. But because it's kind of satisfied by doing all the research, he actually then doesn't do the exercise. So eliminating that way, that satisfaction would be a step towards actually doing it. This study was called The Role of Exercise in Management of Mental Health Disorders, an Integrative Review. And what they found was, whoops, let's try that again. Did I put this in? No. Dysfunctional reward sensitivity, oh, phew, as a core feature, increasing the risk of depression, and it serves as a barrier to implementation of many therapeutic interventions. So it's just not feeling like you're getting enough of a reward out of whatever you're doing. It's a core feature of increasing the risk of depression and a barrier to implementing whatever it is. Not feeling like it's going to be enough of reward or allowing yourself to feel that reward. Did I put it on click? Yes. Exercise training has been postulated to improve reward sensitivity by augmenting dopaminergic function. So exercising on its own is improving basically that sensitivity, that burst of dopamine, feeling like what I did made me feel good. So in this way, exercise helps with depression, if that makes sense. You'll see this wording is directly from the study, not my own wording. Individuals accustomed to habitual PA, and the study referred to PA as physical activity, also showed improved reward system function compared to sedentary counterparts. So more of that dopamine being secreted by the brain because they're exercising, and that was connected with less depression. In conclusion, what they found in this study, the role of exercise in management of mental health disorders. In conclusion, aerobic and resistance exercise training holds promise in the treatment and management of mental health conditions, particularly in depression and anxiety. Pretty promising, right? I have other studies, but we're not going to get to that study. Instead, I wanted everyone, hopefully you don't feel like this now at the end of this presentation. Physical inactivity for prolonged periods stifles brain function. So let's get up and exercise during the day. But I also wanted everyone to just get up right now and do a stretch, and then we'll ask questions or comments. So hopefully you don't feel like this right now. And if you do, this is a good idea. So can everybody get up? And there's actually a really easy exercise that you can do where you go up on your toes, but if if balance is an issue for you, don't do it. Go up on your toes and down and up and down. And one more time, up and down. And when you're doing that, you're squeezing your calf muscles or your gastrocs and you're pushing better circulation up. Okay, now everybody can sit down. That wasn't a major exercise session, but you might feel more alert, more awake, and better. It was less than 5 minutes.